hunger in our communities, Catherine D'Amato of the Greater Boston Food Bank, and Andrew Morehouse of the Western Massachusetts Food Bank. It's all ahead in the 11 o'clock hour at BPR on GBH and NEPM.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Janine Herbst. The Republican-led Senate approved the Trump administration's $9 billion rescission package. It now heads back to the House for a final passage vote. The measure aims to take back money already allocated for public radio and television, as well as nearly $8 billion in foreign assistance to fight famine and disease. NPR's Fatma Tanis has more.
The Trump administration says the rescission package goes after egregious examples of government waste and abuse, which it says it discovered after a thorough review of foreign assistance programs. But several officials at USAID and the State Department told NPR that the administration had not actually conducted a thorough review or made any effort to weed out fraud, waste, and abuse. They said at best, administration officials searched for keywords in the descriptions of thousands of programs. If it had the word gender or family planning or climate, each program was reviewed individually to ensure foreign aid works to, quote, make America safer, stronger, more prosperous. Fatma Tanis, NPR News.
President Trump lashed out at Republicans who are demanding the release of the Epstein files, calling them weaklings whose support he does not want. That's raising questions of whether Trump is splitting his MAGA base. Alex Conant is a Republican strategist.
Nobody changes the topic better than Donald Trump, and he has a lot to talk about these days. That said, his base is not going to ever be satisfied on this unless they're able to somehow provide more information. You can't convince them that they're wrong without evidence, and the administration is having trouble providing evidence that they're wrong.
Speaking there to NPR's Morning Edition, Republican Congressman Thomas Massie is trying to force a House vote on whether the administration should release the files. In a rare act of bipartisanship, Congress passed new legislation to help rescue thousands of veterans from foreclosure after a series of stumbles from the VA left thousands on the verge of losing their homes. NPR's Chris Arnold has more.
The bill, which is expected to be signed by President Trump, directs the VA to stand up a safety net for vets who've fallen behind on their mortgages. Vets who qualify will be able to move their missed payments to the back of their loan term so they can get current and start paying their loans again. Most American homeowners have affordable options like this if they fall behind, but lately not veterans with VA loans. First in 2022, a misstep by the Biden VA stranded thousands of vets. After an NPR investigation, the VA rolled out a rescue program. But then the Trump administration shut that down without first replacing it with anything else. Industry and housing groups are now relieved and say that the new measures should help thousands of veterans avoid foreclosure. Chris Arnold, NPR News.
You're listening to NPR News from Washington.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. A 10th victim has died from the Sunday night fire at the Gabriel House Assisted Living Facility in Fall River. The Bristol District Attorney's Office says the person is 66-year-old Brenda Cropper, who had been hospitalized in critical condition since that fire, which was the deadliest fire in Massachusetts since 1984. Authorities say Cropper succumbed to her injuries yesterday. An investigation continues into the cause and the origin of that fire. And as the strike by sanitation workers at Republic Services continues, trash is starting to pile up big time in areas like Brookline. Brookline News reports that dumpsters outside some of Brookline's restaurants and apartment complex are now piled high with trash as contract talks between the waste management company and its workers drag on. Republic has 160 commercial customers in Brookline. Roughly 30 of those are restaurants and another 20 are establishments licensed to serve food. Several say that they've had to find temporary alternatives to dispose of their trash, and one Beacon Street apartment building is suing Republic. The strike is now in its 17th day. In sports, Red Sox start the second half of the season tomorrow afternoon in Chicago. They open a series with the Cubs. And the forecast this thirsty Thursday, National Weather Service says heat advisory expires at 7 this evening. In the meantime, do stay hydrated. Hazy hot in Henry today, high low 90s, but the heat index will make it feel like triple digits. We're at 83 in Boston right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include the Walton Family Foundation, working to create access to opportunity for people and communities by tackling tough social and environmental problems. More information is at waltonfamilyfoundation.org.
Jim Browdy, I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. At the Boston Public Library tomorrow, the show will be live with Sue O'Connell and Andrea Cabral, but they'll be filling in for me and Jim because we both have the day off.
Hi, Marjorie.
Hello.
You know, the national news, if you were listening at 11 o'clock sharp, mentioned this, but I just want to repeat it because obviously it's very big in our lives and I think in yours too. The Senate voted in the middle of the night last night to defund the Corporation for Public Broadcasting, and that obviously means NPR and PBS. It's on to the House. The House has to act before Friday. There's a deadline to get it to Donald Trump's desk, in which case he would sign the defunding into law, and not just defunding of Corporation for Public Broadcasting, but also for a lot of foreign aid programs that are pretty critical to if a country cares about their fellow men and women. But apparently we don't anymore.
Yeah, it's really sad, especially it's been mentioned for these rural stations that get most of their funding, or a big chunk of it anyway, from the federal government. They may go out of business. That means free radio for people in rural areas that don't have access to the radio would be lost. And, you know, shows like Frontline that just won the Academy Award for all the great work they did documenting the war in Russia, the attack on Ukraine. Won an Academy Award for that. Those kinds of things are all threatened. This is, I mean, the educational work that is done on the station and on television is sad.
Right, everything is threatened, and we should say GBH will survive. It's not going to be insignificant. The cuts that would happen.
We heard one of us may have
the cuts that would happen if it turned out that this thing is signed by Donald Trump by the end of tomorrow. But one of the things that was most galling to me beyond what this will mean, as you say, it's an existential threat to smaller stations, as you said, is, you know, when you hear a Republican who voted for the defunding talk about the deficit, this is $1 billion combined. These are the same Republicans who just voted to increase dollars a week ago. I did the math. This is 1/3000th. Even if it were not as valuable as it is, 1/3000th as much as the vote where they approved a massive expansion of the country's deficit.
The bottom line is, obviously, they don't give a damn about the deficit because they've just put us in really dangerous territory in terms of the value of the dollar, in terms of the American economy. So they don't care.
So we'll keep you up to date on this thing. It is still not final. We hope you'll continue to support us and all other public media stations, and we do really appreciate your support. In any case, first today, the seeming GOP implosion over whether or not Donald Trump's administration should release all the files they have, including a possible client list of dead pedophile Jeffrey Epstein, convicted trafficker of young women to the rich and powerful. It's an issue that's meant a lot to many conspiracy-minded Trump supporters. During his 2024 campaign, I'm sure you know this, Trump himself promised more than once that he would declassify any files. Now his administration has changed its tune, with the Attorney General Bondi saying there is no client list to release. Trump called his own supporters weaklings, was his word yesterday, for continuing to push for more on this. And Marjorie says he doesn't want their support, which I assume means he doesn't want the support of his son, Donald Jr., of Marjorie Taylor Greene, of Lauren Boebert, of the head of the FBI, of the number 2 person of the FBI. In any case, the number is 877-301-8970 to call or text. What do you make of this fissure in Trump world? And is it possible, we've asked this question before, that this could be what sinks Donald Trump's stranglehold on his own party. And personally, are you frustrated with the lack of information, lack of transparency about a rich serial abuser with direct connections to some of the most powerful people in our country? While they've been accused of nothing, I want to be clear. Bill Clinton had a relationship with Epstein. Donald Trump had a relationship with Epstein. Alan Dershowitz represented Epstein. The number's 877-301-8970. I'll ask you the same question I asked John King 2 days ago, and I don't remember who I asked yesterday, but somebody. If Trump wasn't trying to protect himself or somebody he cares deeply about, why would he not do exactly what he said he'd do as a campaigner and what most of his MAGA base, by the way, the polling on this, overall 69% think the government is hiding details. That's Republicans, Democrats, Independents. Only 6% in a Reuters Ipsos poll disagrees. Only 17% approve of how Trump's handling this. Unless he's protecting himself for somebody else, why wouldn't he disclose all this stuff?
Well, I don't know. I mean, that obviously is what raises suspicion that he does have something to disclose. I didn't realize until I was preparing for today that Michael Wolff, the biographer who's written about Donald Trump, has 100 hours of tape of Jeffrey Epstein because he was thinking of doing a biography of Jeffrey Epstein. And in those 100 hours, he talks, Epstein, the late Epstein, talks a lot about his relationship with Donald Trump. I didn't know The Guardian talked about Epstein going to Trump's Fifth Avenue penthouse back in 1993 with Epstein's then girlfriend, a Sports Illustrated model, and her talking about, now I don't know if this is true.
This is Epstein's allegation.
Epstein's allegation, encouraging Trump to grope her in this a time she was at the house with his house, Trump's house, with Epstein. I don't know if that's true. So maybe he's worried about that kind of stuff being out there. But you know,
he had a close relationship. He called him in the early 2000s a terrific,
they hung around a lot.
Terrific guy. There are tons of photographs of the two together. He also, Trump said, this is not an allegation, it's true. In the same interview where he said, I think it was New York Magazine, that Epstein was a terrific guy, he said he's attracted to, quote, women on the young side. Now, admittedly, this is before his conviction and his alleged suicide, but it appears that if you got nothing to hide, then obviously disclosure is what you should engage in.
There's a great irony here. We all talked when Trump was running for president the first time around, when he would do these outrageous things, like talk about the late, great war hero John McCain, who was in a North Vietnamese prison for years, that he didn't like people like McCain because he liked people who didn't get caught, and then he made fun of a disabled reporter. All these crazy things he did. We all thought this is going to end his candidacy. There's a certain irony of I don't think this is going to ruin his presidency, as Laura Loomer, that right-wing kind of lunatic type person, says. But it's ironic that the people on his side, his base, his people are turning on him. It's not the Democrats that are turning on him.
Well, he says it's all about the Democrats. But if it was all about the Democrats, then why, and if they created this so-called hoax, which is pretty insulting to the arguably as many as 1,000 young women who were raped and abused in other fashion, a hoax, if the Democrats were behind all this, then why didn't the Democrats release all this stuff when they were in power?
Well,
it's it's Joe Biden who's responsible for this.
He just makes this stuff up. I mean, he's talking about the Russia hoax all the time. It wasn't a hoax. I mean, he was not found to have colluded with Russia during the campaign, but there was eminent proof that Russia was involved in trying to get Trump elected president. It wasn't a hoax. So he, I think at this stage of the game, if Trump opens his mouth, there's a 50-50 chance that he's lying, because he lies so much about everything.
Well, the one thing I'll take issue with you about, and I've been wrong every time I've said something like this, so keep that in mind. We'll get to your calls in a second, is when you say, I don't think this could sink the Trump people. This is his own people. This is not being attacked by anti-Trumpers. His head of the FBI, when he was not the head of the FBI, was on the other side of this, disclose everything. So was Dan Bongino, former podcaster, number 2 at the FBI.
And that's not going to last. That's not going to last.
The Attorney General said on Fox News that she'd release everything. It's all sitting on her desk. Now she says there's nothing to see there. His own son, Marjorie Taylor Greene, who could not be more sycophantic when it comes to Trump. Mike Johnson, the Speaker of the House, said it should be disclosed.
Michael Flynn, the guy that Trump got out of jail.
877-301-8970. The part that, I want to say one last thing, the part that to me is most offensive, other than the potential potential cover-up is for Trump to repeatedly call this a hoax when there is no doubt. Ghislaine Maxwell is in jail for 20 years.
Well,
What kind of
that's the
hoax
other
is there?
thing.
What kind of hoax is there when there's a conviction of somebody
Well,
after?
it's not a hoax. It's just his line. Everything he doesn't like becomes a hoax. But the other thing you pointed out, I don't know if you just pointed it out now,
What was
but if there was something that were going to help her with her prison sentence,
Mm-hmm.
if she had information that she could bargain and not get 20
She would
years, maybe
use it.
I would imagine.
Well, that's a countervailing argument.
Wouldn't you? I mean, if you were facing 20 years in jail.
You know what the answer to that is? Release everything and let's find out who's telling the truth. Let's
Well,
start.
here's one thing we should say, though. There are things that they really can't release. I mean, you can't be releasing secret grand jury testimony. You don't want to release things
Oh,
about
yes, you can.
15-year-old
Yes, you can. You redact names and identifiers,
Jim,
and you release everything else.
But then they'll be obsessed with what wasn't redacted. I mean, there's no.
So wait, but the solution to that is to release nothing because
No.
they're going to be upset with a redacted
But
release.
no matter what they release, it's not going to be good enough.
Fine, Jane and Conk, you can make that case about almost any government disclosure.
That's
Marjorie.
right. But people get very upset about redactions, and I'm sure if they do release a lot of redacted stuff, people will say, well, they're hiding up the stuff that was redacted. I mean, some of these people are people that thought Hillary Clinton. I mean, you may not like Hillary Clinton, but I think most sane people would say the last person on earth that could be running a pedophile ring would be Hillary Clinton
Comet ping pong
in the
pizza
basement
in the
of a pizza joint in Washington, D.C. I mean, come on.
Let's go to Jane in Concord. You're first on BPR. Welcome to the show, Jane. Hi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
If you folks could ask your team to try to look up what the big book was about Epstein's. A few years ago, I read that book. I just can't remember the title, or the author was a female journalist from southern Florida. And Trump was actually not implicated by name, as far as I know so far. Alan Dershowitz was considered a perpetrator also, I think, by Virginia Giuffre, who ended up taking her own life after she'd moved to Australia.
Yeah, that was
She
horrible.
was one of the more publicized names.
Yeah.
And Dershowitz was in the book I'm talking about the journalist. He went after that journalist harder than anybody else to try to silence the story and clear his name, supposedly. But I didn't get the impression that the journalist ever felt that he wasn't involved. And anyway, it's a very interesting book. I hope that this does reduce some of Trump's support, since he, in my opinion, is one of the most dangerous people in the world. And I'm still scared about who's going to take his place now that they're giving even more power to the United States president. Already
Jane, can
powerful position.
I hear you. And when you say, I hope it reduces Trump's support, if he is in any way involved, it should. But I think more significant than damage to Trump is some satisfaction to the women who suffered through all this as young girls. I mean, almost all of them are arguing for transparency. And for them alone, I think this makes sense. Jane, we'll check it out. By the way, the woman's name is Julie Brown. She's on CNN virtually every day now. Mm-hmm. It's called Perversion of Justice. She's a Miami Herald reporter who covered Epstein when he was in Palm Beach. And again, you can see her virtually every day now on CNN as this thing continues.
Well, I think a lot of those young women, many of whom were girls at the time this happened to them, were devastated that they never got their day in court. I mean, Epstein took his own life, and they never got the chance to testify. A couple of them did get in the Maxwell trial, but not obviously in the Epstein trial. Let's go to Sean from Raynham. Hi, Sean.
Hi, how are you today?
Good.
Fine, thanks.
Good, yeah. I just think that this is probably the biggest cover-up of my lifetime. Definitely, I'm in my early 30s, but I've just never seen anything quite like this before. And it kind of makes me feel like it kind of makes me lose faith in our judicial system, in our government. I mean, more so than other things in the past. I mean, obviously, we know that Trump has done a lot of crazy things, but this is so far beyond anything that has happened so far, and I think that I think they're truly testing the limits of what like normal people will accept as something normal. I mean, there's obviously a lot of Trump supporters out there that will not really pay attention to this kind of news because the news stations that they watch don't cover this type of stuff.
By the way, can you stop
that's
there
a
for
good
1
point,
second?
Sean.
The other day, CNN reported that in the past 24 hours, Fox News had briefly mentioned the Jeffrey Epstein story once in 24
While
hours,
mentioning
underlining
Joe
your point,
Biden
Sean.
about 475
literally,
times.
they
or
went on to
something.
say, mentioning Biden repeatedly for whatever it was. To add to your list, Sean, you're probably aware of this in terms of background. Trump's first Secretary of Labor in the first term was this guy Acosta. Acosta was the prosecutor in Florida who agreed to this controversial very light slap on the wrist to Epstein in
remember
a plea
getting
deal.
A year and a half, and he got
and
to
he
go
worked
home.
to his office.
Yeah, he
and-
came home
yeah.
during the day and went back to the prison at night, or do I have it the other way around?
I'm not sure what it was.
He was not 24/7 in prison. Let's put
Sean,
it that
thank
way.
you very much for your point of view.
And
we
by the
appreciate
way,
it.
did we mention Charlie Kirk, the podcaster? He's a very popular podcaster.
we didn't.
He briefly announced he wasn't going to talk about
For
Epstein
one day. For
anymore.
one day. It's humiliating. He talking anymore, and then what happens the next
Well,
day?
he starts talking about it again
'Cause his
he
own
realized
people are
where his audience
savaging,
is,
right.
and that's the dilemma for Dan Bongino. I mean, he's at the FBI right now, big deal at the FBI. There was talk about how he's going to quit the FBI, but Dan Bongino became a wealthy man through his podcast, and I'm sure he's worried about losing credibility with
When
his
he goes
listeners,
back, when he's
because
done,
he was
yeah.
a huge pusher of this Epstein file thing. And he can't stay at the FBI, I don't think, when he's trashing the Attorney General, Pam Bondi. They had a screaming match, I guess, between the two of them.
By the way, I'm a little disappointed that we haven't gotten a Trump supporting call who says this is a hoax. I just want to say that while we have no idea, other than a friendship, about the relationship between Trump and Epstein, we do know that Donald Trump was found by a court to have been guilty of sexual abuse, a definition that would be rape under Massachusetts law. We have heard the tape about 10,000 times with Donald Trump saying on Access Hollywood that you can grab him by the you-know-whats, you can do whatever you want. And while that's purely circumstantial evidence, it's not like this is a guy who has been deeply concerned about appropriate relationships with women in his life. So
no, I mean, how many women are alleging inappropriate touching or groping or grabbing? Yeah, I think we're up to about 30 by now. They're all lying, of course, according to Donald Trump. That's a big hoax too.
Yeah.
They're all lying to write books. But I think, with the exception of Eugene Carroll, has a single one of them written a book?
I don't know, actually.
Well, if they have, I've missed it. You know what? Here's one of our cynical texters who basically says, so that he gets found, I'm paraphrasing because I've lost it now, but so he gets found to have been on this list or been involved with these young women, so what?
Well, see, can I tell you something? It's so funny you say that. I'm glad that texter wrote. I agree with that. I don't think the average person amongst his hardcore supporters cares if he did horrible things, because we know he's done horrible things and they're perfectly fine with it. It's the cover-up. I mean, how many times have we heard in American political life, the cover-up is worse than the crime? Yeah. Watergate being an excellent example, by the way. That's really the issue. And I think if he did a 180 right away, and that's the other thing. Did I say this to you on the air or off the air? I can't remember either. Is the thing that I find amazing about his refusal to release this stuff is why wouldn't he just order Pam Bondi to destroy whatever implicates whoever he's trying to protect, whether it's himself, his friend, his son, his whatever.
I know. And she'd do it, wouldn't she?
Well, I would assume they do whatever Donald Trump asked them to do, including doing 180-degree turns on things. I mean, Bongino may end up being the only principled person in the whole group if it turns out he resigns, staying true to his principles. I think your name is Harold in Greenville, Rhode Island. Did I get that right or no?
You got me right.
Excellent.
That's Harold.
Welcome.
First time, long time.
We really appreciate it.
Yeah. You know, what's amazing to me is that every day when I turn the news on, it's like getting a fresh fire hose in the face, right?
I know.
That's a great way to describe it.
It is.
The more stuff that they throw up in the air, the heavier the clouds of dirt and suspicion, the clearer it becomes that there's only one reason why they refuse to release it, and that's because he's culpable. If he were not, they'd put it out there for all to see. There'd be no smoking gun, but we know otherwise. So he just seems to believe that he is untouchable, and we all impatiently stand by to watch him at some point in his life have his big fall from grace. But he's amazing.
Harold, I want to repeat one thing you said about when I've said repeatedly, either protecting himself or someone close to him. He has no history of ever caring about protecting anybody except himself. So I take back what I said and I subscribe to your notion.
Of course.
Based upon Trump's 79 years on the planet, it is not unreasonable to believe that the only reason he's doing that is to protect himself.
But the question is, so why was he pushing so much for it to be released when Joe Biden was the president?
Because he knew they wouldn't release it, I assume. I mean, I don't know.
I mean, I guess that's what one of the texters is asking. How come Bush? Well, I don't think Bush was even involved in this. When did we even know about Jeffrey Epstein's list? It would have been well into Trump's first term.
I don't know. Harold, that was an excellent first call. We hope you make a second one.
Here's a good one.
He's just go ahead.
Interesting that a slew of guys from Massachusetts get called out for consensual brothel visits, yet the money crew that tagged along with Epstein hid behind it documents black bars.
That's true. Anonymous texter says with a little bit of sarcasm, he's just protecting the Clintons, obviously. I mean, Bill Clinton had a relationship with
Monica Lewinsky?
him, too, yeah.
Oh, yeah, with him. I know. How many people would think right away the first person on the list would, of course, have to be Bill Clinton?
Bill Clinton, yeah, exactly.
I never heard about him with underage women, but needless to say, I would not be surprised. For underage girls, I should say.
Yeah. 877-301 8970. And again, this is according to polling, which I want to repeat if you just tuned in, which was staggering to Marjorie and me. Only 17% of all voters, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, approve of how Trump has handled this, which is by far the lowest approval number on anything affecting Trump. And the overall population, 69%, again, Republicans, Democrats, Independents, say the government is hiding some details of this, and only 6% say they are not. That's pretty powerful stuff, don't you think?
Here's another good text. I'm confused why MAGA is shocked. He told Billy Bush he grabs women by the you-know-what anytime he wants to, and they still voted for him twice. Do they think this was a one-off? They knew what they were getting. Okay, we're talking about the Jeffrey Epstein case, the fight in Trump world. The MAGA base upset that the list of so-called client lists. We never know that the client list exists. But
it's not just the client list.
The files, all the files about the Jeffrey Epstein case have yet to be released. Our number is 877-301-8970. Why is he not releasing this? What is this all about? I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You are listening to BPR on GBH and NEPM and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. More on Jeffrey Epstein right after this break.
I'm Edgar B. Herwick III, coming up on The Culture Show. In his new book, science journalist Chris Burdick writes about our chronic exposure to noise. The loud music in restaurants, jackhammers in the early morning, planes flying overhead. All of it is disrupting our sleep, increasing stress, and sabotaging our concentration. But there are also architects, engineers, and rock stars working to bring things down. That and more is today on The Culture Show at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Maine Maritime Museum, offering oyster tasting cruises throughout the summer. Visitors can learn about aquaculture from Maine's oyster farmers and experience freshly shucked oysters. MaineMaritimeMuseum.org. And Mass General Brigham. Their leading heart and vascular specialists are committed to providing breakthrough care to patients with cutting-edge research and innovative treatments. Learn more at massgeneralbrigham.org/heart.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Jim Browder and Marjorie Egan. Streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Andrea Cabral and Sue O'Connell sitting in for us tomorrow at the library. They have a great lineup, by the way. It's going to be a great show. If you're just tuning in, we're talking about the troubles that this Epstein situation, Jeffrey Epstein, is causing for Donald Trump, including a revolt in his own base. He used to be pro-transparency and full disclosure around the Epstein files. He's now against it, saying that the people in his own party, again, his son included, who are making this an issue are weaklings. He does not want their support. And a lot of people think that this is the first of many things we thought might stick to Donald Trump that actually might do the sticking. 877-301-8970. We want to know what you make of this issue, both the political implications and the larger issue about what it means to the women who were then girls involved.
Bob from Oklahoma. Hi, Bob.
Hello, Bob. Whoops. Bob disappeared.
We lost him. Sorry.
Where do you want to go?
Jerry from East Providence. Hi, Jerry.
Hey, Jerry. Hello.
Good morning.
And to you.
The only point I wanted to make was the actual existence, because Jim, you were commenting earlier about the possible destruction of the files.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of akin to people saying, "Oh, Hillary Clinton took a hammer to her hard drive." Everything, once it ends up on the internet in one way or another, is mirrored on another file server somewhere else. So I think the documents are out there, and I'm betting that Elon Musk has a copy anyway.
Well, I would bet if Elon Musk...
information anyway, so...
Well, say that again, the last sentence there, Jerry.
Because they took all of our information with this Doge situation where they took...
Oh, that's a very good point, Jerry.
All our IRS tax returns and everything else. I'm betting that the information is somewhere, and there's a copy on another file server somewhere else, whether it be in Boston or it's in D.C. or, I don't think that they're having a hard drive stop.
Well, I hope you're right. Jerry, let me ask you a question, and Marjorie, too. I want to make sure I'm right, and if not, our colleagues will check. Not only did Musk call for the release, didn't Musk say in a tweet about a week ago that the reason Trump isn't releasing it because he's implicated? Did he say that? Am I right about that?
I'm not
Could
sure.
Could you guys check that to make sure that I'm characterizing Musk properly? That's a wonderful point, Jerry, and I hope you're right, and I hope it doesn't disappear, even if they try to make it disappear.
Yeah,
Thanks
Staff
for
is pointing out that Epstein first got in trouble in 2005 because a parent said that he had sexually abused the parent's 14-year-old daughter. But I'm not sure when the whole list thing and this whole became a big brouhaha. It was not. I certainly didn't know.
Well, even if there's not a list, and people
ago.
like Alan Dershowitz would say there's not a list, and generally, I mean, as I said yesterday, if he said there's not a list, that means there probably is a list. But beyond that thing, even if there's not a list as such, when she talked about this mountain of files, Pam Bondi, on her desk, even if it's not a list as such, if there's information, well, that becomes a list. Does it not? I'm not suggesting it's a comprehensive... for people, Alan Dershowitz said in the video the other day, I'm paraphrasing, what kind of person is going to keep a list of people who are engaged in this abuse of young girls? And my answer, who would do that? Well, someone who might do it is someone who believes in trafficking young girls for sexual assault purposes. So, I mean, it's not as crazy as some of his defenders
when we were first
think.
reading about him, and we're talking about like multiple girls in a day.
Yeah.
It wasn't just one a week or anything.
Well, some are saying there's as many as 1,000 girls who were involved in this, and we've learned from that Dufresne, who took her life recently, and many other people who've had the courage to speak up, either anonymously or by name, the understandable, incredible pain, long-term trauma, this is called, for people who Epstein and his friends preyed upon.
If they thought that he was going to help in modeling careers, acting careers, that was the pitch to get them, and then he asked them to do massages, and then things went.
Yeah, and that shouldn't be lost. I mean, while there's going to be a lot of focus, as there should be, about the implications for the President of the United States in this thing, the first focus is going to be on these kids, many of whom are adults now, who had to live through this incredible horror perpetrated by Epstein.
You alerted me to this piece that he wrote in the Wall Street Journal, what he claims that there were no video cameras in any guest bedrooms. There were only video cameras in public parts of his house, like living rooms, because someone had reported the theft of money and a licensed firearm from a drawer in his living room.
One thing we haven't mentioned here is Laura Loomer, who is this lunatic who has huge influence with Donald Trump. The firing of somebody from his national security team apparently was dictated by her. She's called for a special counsel. And in an interview he did, I think it was yesterday, he being Trump, he didn't rule out a special counsel, so that maybe because of her influence, the direction in which this thing goes, even though that might be very dangerous for Donald Trump. Joan in the car, hi.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. Thank you for taking my call.
Of course.
A couple things. One of them is this deal where they have recently, I think, fired Jim Comey's daughter.
Oh, yes.
We're going to talk about that with Andrea Cabral. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, it's fine.
This is just getting crazy to me, and how he gets away with this. And my other concern is, well, it's just a reality, is these female Republican women. I mean, if you could ever pick something to stand up for.
That is a wonderful
And I don't
point.
mean it's a sexist fight. Is come on, these were babies. They were I overheard an interview with a 14-year-old victim, and obviously she isn't now, but it was just horrific. And come on, get some spine.
By the way, even though we will discuss this with Andrea Cabral, since you brought it up, General, I'm glad you did it. Maureen Comey, who worked in the Southern District of New York in the U.S. Attorney's Office, prosecuted
on Jeffrey Epstein.
Was part of the prosecution team against Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, and she was fired yesterday by the Justice Department.
When I was
Joan,
thinking about this,
call.
at first you say to yourself, well, it'll be easy for her to get another job. But then I thought, will it? Because obviously the President of the United States wants to screw her. So
that's not really the point, is if she's done good work.
I know, but I'm just thinking this isn't just like, you think about her finances, her own life. I mean, I'm sure her father's got some money. Her
father, who's being criminally investigated by the Trump administration.
But my point is, if you are blackballed by the Trump administration, it isn't necessarily that easy for you to just slip into another job because people are afraid of hiring you because they're afraid of Donald Trump. Okay, we are moving on. Up next, we're going to talk about Trump's cuts to hunger and poverty issues and help that people get who are poor around the country. We're going to talk with members of the largest food banks in Massachusetts. That's up next. You're listening to Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy, BPR on GBH and NAPM, streaming at youtube.com. Catherine D'Amato from the Boston Food Bank, Andrew Morehouse from the Food Bank of Western Mass. They're next.
In Afghanistan, the Taliban has a new initiative to stop illegal logging. If that sounds like the Taliban is going green, some experts say maybe not.
From my perspective, this has very little to do with conservation and very much to do with power balances.
The Taliban's interest in controlling Afghanistan's logging industry. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for GBH comes from you. And the Massachusetts Educational Financing Authority, helping families overcome the college planning stress. Committed to providing trusted guidance with calculators, step-by-step videos, and more. Details at mefa.org. And Comcast, offering Xfinity with internet and mobile plans to help stay connected at home and on the go. Restrictions apply. Xfinity Internet requires Xfinity Mobile. Actual speeds vary.
Welcome back to BPR on GBH and NEPM. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We are live at the library tomorrow. Well, actually, we're not live at the library tomorrow. Marjorie and I are off. Sue O'Connell and Andrea Cabral will be filling in for us. They have a great lineup for the show. 1 in 3 Massachusetts families don't have enough to eat. That's according to a recent statewide study by the Greater Boston Food Bank. So all comes as food assistance at the federal level faces unprecedented cuts, thanks to Donald Trump's tax and spending bill signed into law on July 4th. In the New York Times recently, the great Tracy Kidder from Northampton wrote, "Cutting SNAP will drastically increase the pressure on food banks. Their pantries are a model of decency, of coherent community efforts on behalf of people in need." Joining us in Studio 3 are two people among those models of decency. Greater Boston Food Bank President and CEO Catherine D'Amato. Catherine, it's great to see you again. Thanks for being here. And Food Bank of Western Mass Executive Director Andrew Morehouse. Andrew, great to meet you. Thanks for joining us.
Likewise. Good morning.
Thank you both for coming in. So, Catherine, we've spoken to you many times before, but just in case people don't know, tell us what the food bank does.
Sure. Well, both Andrew and I have across the state most of the counties. And then within those counties, he has Western Mass, I have Eastern Mass. And within those counties, we have cities and towns. And in those towns, there are programs, pantries, daycare centers, soup kitchens, community meal programs, shelters. Our job is to supply food to them. And where a program may not exist, we might do it ourselves, like a mobile market or do a direct service. So millions and millions of pounds of food between these two food banks are going to those 1 in 3 every day.
And 1 in 3, from what I understand from the survey that your organization did, is even a higher number in some counties in Western Massachusetts. Why is that, Andrew?
Well, that's a good question, and one never knows the real answer, but we believe it has a lot to do with the fact that we're the most rural area of of the Commonwealth, and we have high concentrations of food insecurity and poverty in some of our what we would consider largest cities, Springfield and other gateway cities.
What does food insecurity mean? I mean, we use the term a lot, and I'm not sure we're as precise as we need to be. Andrew, do you want to?
Sure. I mean, the colloquial definition is not knowing where your next meal's coming from. It's as simple as that. And there are far too many people who experience that, including elders and children and people with disabilities, veterans. Over half of the people that we provide food assistance to are elders and children.
You know, Catherine, are you at this too long? I know how caring a person you are. No.
Okay, there's a judgment.
That was not the end of the question.
It's very rude.
It was more to the sense. The question was, have you been at this too long to not be shocked when you hear numbers like you reported out?
Sure.
1 in 3. Sure. You know, every year we reflect what you report. It's staggering. I mean, one of the wealthiest states in the country, and the notion that if you look to your left and your right, one of those 3 people is food insecure in a state like this is staggering.
That's correct. Well, you have to have hope, to do this work. You have to get up every day and do your best. And hunger is an outcome of poverty. It involves 3 very important things. It involves the economy. It involves politics, which is what's being played out right now, and an individual's personal situation. What might be happening to them, where they were born, what zip code, do they have a health issue, do they have a child or an elder they're caring for? So we don't control those. So a lot of our work is responsive. The 1 in 3 has been since COVID across the state. It was 1 in 7 prior to COVID. And I believed, and I know a lot of colleagues believe that things would get better, right? It was all going to go back to normal. And then as we went through the pandemic, it didn't. And here we are to stay. It's been stuck here. And it will take action and policy changes to move that needle. But I will say to you that we're in the worst of my entire time that I've ever seen from the politics side.
Well, the needle is about to be moved, but in the wrong direction, obviously.
Yeah, it's in the wrong direction.
Your entire time is how many years?
40
since
years. 1979, we were talking about that. We've seen recessions, we've seen unemployment, we've seen high interest rates, we've been through wars, we've been through a number of things, where the economy's been impacted. Every president makes policy changes. Everyone. But this is all things are changing at the same time, and it is hurting immensely poor people.
Well, let's talk about some of those things. I mean, let's start with the most obvious, at least us. We've talked ad nauseum, not with any near the level of expertise you two have, about the SNAP cuts and the food stamp cuts in the bill that was signed, the budget and
let's
cut
just
bill
emphasize,
on July 4th.
This is to give tax cuts to most
wealthiest
of the
people in America.
Vast majority of the wealthiest people in America. Middle class will get some, but nothing much like the rich people will get.
So, Andrew, it's fairly obvious to me, and please disabuse me if I'm wrong, is there's an inverse proportion. The deeper the cuts, or maybe a direct relationship, I got it wrong, the deeper the cuts in SNAP, the greater the demand on people like what you and Catherine do for a living. People have to go somewhere to survive, right?
Absolutely. I like to think of our role as the last line of defense when we can't count on our federal government or state government, which is not the case. Fortunately, we do live in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts that does support our work, and more is coming. But the federal government clearly does not. That exists right now. And so more people are going to be coming to food pantries, meal sites that we supply food to, seeking out the food that they can't rely on from SNAP benefits. And that goes into effect immediately. We know estimates of the Mass Law Reform Institute are that right off the bat, 20 to 25,000 individuals, legally present asylees and refugees who are here for legitimate reasons, right, fleeing persecution, death, and the fear of both if they were to return. And we're talking about including Afghans who supported the United States military, right, for 20 plus years or whatever. They immediately have lost their benefits, and estimates are that as many as 150,000 more individuals may lose their benefits because of the new work requirements that are now in effect. And we're talking about parents and guardians who are SNAP recipients who now may have children as young as 14 years of age who now they're required to go to work 20 hours a week or find volunteer opportunities unless they have a waiver due to a disability of some sort. And I don't know about you, but when my kid was 14 years old, I wanted to know where he or she was and be able to pick them up from school and get them home in a safe place. And similarly, parents and SNAP recipients 55 years and older to 65 are also required to go to work. So that's 150,000 people who now have to meet these really stringent requirements when they may be caring for children or grandchildren because they can't find childcare or it's too expensive.
Well, from
and by the
what
way,
I
a ton of these recipients are already working anyway.
Yeah. 75% of SNAP recipients are already working.
Yeah, so it's not as if they're going to be, I mean, they're already, what kind of stories do you filter up to you guys? I know you guys are running the programs, but you must hear about what people do in these situations, how they manage to get through the day.
Sure. I mean, when you are searching for your food or you have a federal support program, whether it be WIC or, we're fortunate in Massachusetts that school meals is funded. And that's been an awesome, in fact, the study shows real gain there in terms of having free meals in our school system in Massachusetts.
But what about the summertime?
Yeah, no. Well, the summertime there are summer programs, but we didn't lose ground. Year on year, which other places we have. But what you hear is the trade-offs. The trade-offs have always been there, but you're hearing more. The cost of food, cost of rent, keeping perhaps an education going, paying for tuition, paying for a kid's medicine, your own medicine, your parents' medicine. These are all the trade-offs that people make. So as Andrew's noted, these drastic draconian policies will force individuals and families into the private charitable system across the state, which is what we do. So if you don't have that benefit anymore, if you don't have the opportunity to walk through the front door of a grocery store, you're going to need to go to your local food pantry and seek assistance.
We should also add something. You touched upon it, Catherine, a second ago, is while we discuss SNAP benefits, which is the first thing that comes to people's minds when they talk about the pain the federal government is about to, additional pain to inflict on people who don't deserve it. These Medicaid cuts, obviously, huge. You touched on a second. So if you're one of the X million people thrown off Medicaid, you have to make a choice, which is what you
do have to make a choice.
You got to decide, am I going to spend money on health care that used to be covered by Medicaid, and maybe it's making sure my mother is safe or my grandmother is safe in a nursing home, or am I going to pay for food? So the Medicaid cuts have a deep impact on the ability of people to feed themselves and their families.
It's a cascade of bad choices, or choices that are really difficult to make, because your hierarchy of trying to figure out which one is most important, how do you make the best decision from the worst choices?
Since you're a hopeful person, I have great hope on this issue. Is what I'm sure you've read, one of the guys, the senator from Missouri, Josh Hawley, who voted to gut Medicaid, now has a bill to restore the funding to Medicaid, the same program that he voted to gut a week ago. One last thing related to this. Can you talk about all the trickle-down effects of being food insecure? I think we think of it so narrowly that, you're just hungry. Andrew, tell us what that means for people.
Yeah, I wanted to add to that because, what I'm hearing over and over again from folks who live with food insecurity is the stigma and, the stress associated with seeking food assistance and living on the margin. Over and over again, people will tell you how hard it is just to survive. So, can you imagine, so many folks that are probably listening are middle income folks. They're dealing with stress. But can you imagine living with stress and trying to find food and keep a roof over your head and pay your utility bills and have health insurance? It leads to the kind of trauma that affects your health and your ability to function and ability to maintain a functional family environment, particularly in communities that are disproportionately affected by income and crime and violence. It affects your psyche, and these are the kinds of things that people
also
struggle
affects
with.
if you're a kid, it affects your ability to learn.
That's
in
right.
School.
Well, your productivity, we've seen that
Yeah.
before. I mean, 5 years ago, we did a study that showed that $2.4 billion was being eaten up and food insecurity in our state. But the productivity, you miss work, you miss school, kids don't go. The health consequences are real, and in terms of adequate resources and access to healthy foods, they matter.
One of the things I keep thinking about too is that a lot of people are looking for a rent they can afford in Boston. You have to be making $75,000 to afford a one-bedroom apartment in Boston. Springfield, Worcester, Hampton County, those areas are not as expensive as Boston, but they're getting pretty expensive. And
Housing is a crisis in Western Mass as well.
So, I mean, if you are not making a good amount of money, I'm sure in Springfield and Worcester, you can't afford your rent before you even start talking about food.
That's right. An annual income to be able to support your basic needs in Western Massachusetts is, higher than $65,000, $70,000 now. And if you're making minimum wage or even above minimum wage, forget it.
That's the thing that kills me, that you could be working 40 hours a week in the United States of America, and you can't afford rent, and you can't afford food, and you can't afford your medicine. I mean, it's a really
and now you may
screwed
not
up
continue
system.
to be eligible for some of these programs.
Yeah, that's the other thing.
And on top of so the old word safety net just isn't there. And the states, the burden on the states is just it's enormous in terms of each of these states. I mean, it's not like you could go to another state, say, oh, I'm going to go to Indiana because they have great benefits over there and they're going to take care of me. No, they're all playing now by the same federal rule relative to SNAP and Medicaid. And your Medicaid point is well taken, Jim. That is a tsunami coming because you don't have your health care. You are going to go to the emergency room. The impact on hospitals to carry that and their values and vow to care for people. It's the same for us. It's $100 million a year we anticipate the private food bank charitable system would have to make up in order to assist these families.
In Massachusetts alone.
Massachusetts alone.
That's Catherine D'Amato. She's the CEO and president of the Greater Boston Food Bank. With her here is Andrew Morehouse, who's the executive director of the Food Bank of Western Massachusetts. Andrew or Catherine, we talk a lot. We talk to educators, we talk to healthcare professionals, and they say a lot of people who are undocumented, who need healthcare, need their kid to go to school, don't send their kid to school, they don't go to work, they don't go to the doctor, whatever the hell it is, because they're fear they're going to get snatched, as so many people. Do people have the same anxiety about going to a food bank in 2025?
A local food pantry, meal site, or shelter that we provide food to? Absolutely. We're hearing that across our network.
So what do you do about that?
That's a good question. Well, we try to communicate that all people are welcome, and we're here to provide assistance to whomever. It's not only folks, undocumented folks who are not interested or, willing out of fear to go to a pantry or meal site. These are the people who work, in the hotel industry, working on our farms in Western Massachusetts, and they're being affected now. I walked into a farmer who's a donor of and who sells produce to both our food banks, and his processing center was empty. These are the kinds of things that
What do you mean his processing center was empty?
The workers didn't show up.
They didn't show up.
They're fearful.
Yeah.
I mean, there were some farmers.
And these are documented folks too, but just because of the color of their skin, they're afraid that they're going to get scooped up, and the impact it's going to have on them and their families is outrageous.
So what did he do with a processing center that was empty?
Well, I know he's looking to
hire other people,
and that's not easy to do when young people in this day and age don't want to work on a farm. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah.
Anecdotally, I live in Inman Square in Cambridge, and I'm thinking the Daily Table just closed a couple of weeks ago in Central Square, which was another resource. We talked a couple of weeks ago, which you know better than we, the Department of Agriculture cutting direct grants to food banks, in addition to the SNAP and the Met. So it's like an assault from every single direction about the most basic human need.
Yeah, we're talking community action agencies. Much of their budget has gotten zeroed out. So we know that folks who face food insecurity need lots of support and a hand up, really.
So what can Catherine, I know you both have complimented the state, and we're usually criticizing the legislature, but actually it sounds like here they have really bellied up to the proverbial bar as best they can.
Healy said over and over again they can't afford to make up.
I was just going to say, they can't do the whole deal. So what are real people and foundation head? What are people who are listening who care about this stuff as much as you two do? What do they do?
Well, it's a partnership, right? It always has been a public-private partnership with government. In this case, the weight is on the state, and now philanthropy. Philanthropy is being inundated. Doesn't matter if you're what size foundation or donor you are, you're getting asked and asked and asked from every angle. And whether it be research or whether it be food or climate change, or pick it. It's housing. It's anything. Youth. It's just all over the place. We're all after the same money. So that's going to be very challenging and difficult. The little organizations are going to perhaps not be able to be sustained. You will see some compression.
Understand.
And there will hopefully be larger organizations that can step forward and help and be able to move forward. We both come from very durable organizations. We are in our communities. We're going to be there. Whatever we're able to distribute, we will. And we're going to keep fighting. And that's the hope.
This obviously is an immoral thing to take all this food and stuff away from people that are desperate and poor and to give it to millionaires. So where are the people that are supposed to be moral arbiters? Where are the ministers and churches and the bishops in the Catholic Church and the rabbis and the Jewish? Are they screaming? If they are, I don't hear it.
You're not hearing it.
They're mobilizing, right, at the community level. I mean, today is a day of mobilization, right? It's the Good Trouble protests that are happening across the country.
Yeah.
And, they're raising their concerns, their outrage. And
Thursday's not a really good day to have it, though, is it? Why?
Well, that's
any day is a good day to
have it.
You know what else people can by the way,
I don't hear them. I don't hear that.
It's not as loud yet.
Yeah.
It's not as bad yet.
Yes.
It's not real yet, Marjorie. I mean, even just feeling, extension, people's employment might have been extended. Those federal workers are still on the payroll. They're not off the payroll yet. And so, many of them are on leaves and pay. So it's coming.
One of the wonderful people always ask us what people can do to help in any situation. One, they can volunteer. Two, they can make contributions.
Right.
You also are involved in this fabulous walk. Jim McGovern, the congressman, does this 40-plus mile walk every year.
Yep.
Our colleague on NEPM obviously is deeply involved in this. Monty, here is a couple of years ago, McGovern calls us, and he mentions he's walking with another guy who he happens to work with, and he passes the phone to a former congressman, Joe Kennedy. Here's a little bit of that.
Hello, Jim and Marjorie.
Joe Kennedy, how the hell are you? Good to talk to you.
I'm walking down the street with a guy dressed as Barbie pushing a shopping cart.
Doesn't get much better than that.
And I got to say, I think you guys should do this podcast next year because the guy at the front of the line is transmitting with a radio transmitter and live on the radio.
Okay, so there we are. That is when's the walk? When is the walk?
Sure, it's the first Monday and Tuesday of Thanksgiving week in November.
It's fabulous.
And, that points to something that we are both involved in, Catherine and I.
30 seconds.
And that is raising awareness about the issue and engaging in public advocacy to level the playing field through policy.
I think
change.
you did a wonderful job doing it today, and we hope you both come back soon and do it again and again and again. And keep doing what you're doing, and people, please support what they're doing. Thank you both.
Thank you very much for coming in. We've been speaking with Catherine D'Amato, President and CEO of the Greater Boston Food Bank, and Andrew Morehouse, Executive Director of the Food Bank of Western Mass. gbfb.org, that's you, and then foodbankwma.org, standing for Western Mass. That's Andrew. The show continues in Boston. For you listening on any PM, tune in to the fabulous 413 at 3 o'clock this afternoon. After the noon news, we're going to talk to former Suffolk County Sheriff Andrea Cabral about a strike by lawyers who represent poor clients who can't get lawyers. That's next. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browdy. This is Boston Public Radio.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and the Museum of Printing in Haverhill, preserving the history of graphic communication from typewriters and presses to computers and copiers. Their expanded exhibit of rare and historic Bibles is now on view. More at museumofprinting.org. An unlikely group of spies go behind enemy lines to turn the tide in America's fight for independence. Catch the series premiere of Turn, Washington's Spies, tonight at 9 on GBH 44.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browdy, head on Hour 2 of BPR. Former Suffolk County Sheriff Andrea Cabral discusses how the convicted ringleader of the Varsity Blues criminal conspiracy, a college admissions matter, is back in the college advising business. And then Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Leung discusses an influx of chain restaurants threatening local independent businesses in our Chinatown.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then public bar advocates in Massachusetts get paid less than in surrounding states to represent indigent clients. They've been on strike for better pay since late May, and some people charged with violent crimes are being released because their court proceedings can't continue without lawyers. We'll talk with two of the striking lawyers, Dolan and Jen O'Brien, next on the noontime hour of BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. Sources confirmed to NPR that the Department of Justice has abruptly fired Maureen Comey, the federal prosecutor who oversaw criminal cases against Jeffrey Epstein and his aide Ghislaine Maxwell, as well as that involving hip-hop mogul Sean Diddy Combs. The two sources who were not authorized to speak publicly did not say why Comey was suddenly dismissed. Maureen Comey is the daughter of former FBI Director James Comey, a vocal critic of the Trump administration. The U.S. Senate overnight approved a Trump administration request to cut $9 billion in foreign aid and funding for NPR, PBS, and their member stations. NPR's Scott Newman with details.
Senators held a rapid-fire run-through of amendments to the package of cuts known as rescission that the White House sent to Congress last month. The changes proposed by Democrats, including several aimed at saving public broadcasting funds, failed on largely party-line votes. Senators stripped out cuts to PEPFAR, the George W. Bush-era U.S. AIDS relief program. That change means the bill goes back to the House for a final vote before a Friday deadline. Scott Newman, NPR News, Washington.
Spending at stores, gas stations, and restaurants increased in the month of June. That's the latest from the Commerce Department, which says retail sales grew 0.6% last month compared to May. And that's an increase after 2 months of pullback. Here's NPR's Alina Zelyukh.
Spending grew a little bit almost across the board in June. People bought more clothes, home improvement supplies, and once again, more cars and trucks. A few interesting things are happening. Some people are stocking up in anticipation of more price increases from tariffs down the line. Others perhaps decided to stop waiting and to buy that furniture they'd been holding back on purchasing. And prices have started to tick up a little bit. Inflation picked up steam last month, and often spending grows with it as shoppers have to pay a bit extra for whatever's on their list. For example, inflation rose 2.7% from a year ago, and that's exactly how much more people spent at grocery stores in June of this year compared to last. Alina Zelyukh, NPR News, Washington.
The U.S. is watching with concern the fallout from Israel's airstrikes in Syria. NPR's Ruth Sherlock reports Syria's military headquarters and presidential palace in Damascus came under fire yesterday.
Israel intervened on behalf of the Druze minority, bombing Syrian military positions, including those that you mentioned in Damascus. Interim President Ahmed al-Shara was on Syrian state television today trying to repair relations with the Druze community in Syria, saying they're an integral part of the country, and he accused Israel of sowing division and trying to turn Syria into a theatre of chaos.
That's NPR's Ruth Sherlock. The Israeli military has also been engaged in conflict in Gaza, the West Bank, and a 12-day war with Iran last month. From Washington, this is NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. A 10th victim has died from the Sunday night fire at the Gabriel House Assisted Living Facility in Fall River. The Bristol District Attorney's Office says the person is 66-year-old Brenda Cropper. She had been hospitalized in critical condition since that fire, which is the deadliest fire in Massachusetts since 1984. Authorities say Cropper succumbed to her injuries yesterday. An investigation continues into the cause and origin of that fire, although officials do say that fire was an accident. The MBTA is once again shutting down a key piece of the Red Line for repairs starting at 8:30 this evening. Shuttle buses will replace service between Kendall MIT and JFK UMass. The closure will last through the weekend. Riders complained of major shuttle bus delays during a similar shutdown last week. Caitlin Allen Conley leads the transportation advocacy group Transit Matters. She says she gets all the frustration.
It's tough, right, when your commute is constantly changing. But that said, I think this kind of work is necessary. The T is much like someone's home or apartment. It really demands continuous upkeep.
During last week's closure, shuttle bus riders faced delays up to 45 minutes due to traffic in downtown Boston. The T says to expect similar congestion this time around. Oh, joy. Red Sox start the second half of the season tomorrow afternoon in Chicago with a series against the Cubs. In the forecast, National Weather Service, the heat advisory expires at 7 this evening. In the meantime, do stay hydrated. It's 86 in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from ARM, committed to delivering innovative, advanced computing designed to enable worldwide companies to unleash the capabilities and experiences of AI. The future of AI is built on ARM. ARM.com. This is NPR.
Hey, it's Jim Brady. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. BPR, I'll be live at the Boston Public Radio tomorrow. Jim and I have the day off, though. Sue O'Connell and Andrea Cabral, who's here with us now, will be filling in for me and Jim. Hello, Andrea.
Hello, Andrea. This is where I'm supposed to introduce her.
That's right. I just was saying. I see her on
You can
Zoom.
say hello.
Hi.
Hi,
how are you?
By the way, Andrea Cabral, who just said hello, is the former sheriff of Suffolk County and the former Massachusetts Secretary of Public Safety. Did you know that, Marjorie?
I did know that.
Hi, Andrea.
Hi, Jim. Hello,
Good to see
Marjorie.
you. Great to see you.
You.
So Andrea Cabral, I'm always shocked. This was a real shocker, though. People may remember the name of William Rick Singer. He was the so-called mastermind behind the college admissions cheating scheme that became Varsity Blues. Well, he's allowed to go back into business, even though he pled guilty to racketeering, conspiracy, and some other charges only in 2019. But he can go back into business.
Same business.
Exactly. What's the deal?
Well, I had the same reaction initially when I read this story. How can he be allowed to go back into the very business that he sort of abused and committed, and within which he committed crimes? But when I read it again, and then I also noted that the judge in this case is Judge Denise Casper, who is probably one of the most intelligent and thoughtful jurists on the federal bench. I read it again, and I had a completely different reaction. So for people who don't know, as you mentioned, Rick Singer pled guilty to racketeering conspiracy, money laundering conspiracy, and it was all part of the Varsity Blues thing. So people know it mostly because very well-known actresses and their husbands were indicted for it. Felicity Huffman and Lori, I think it's Lori McLaughlin.
Lori Loughlin, yeah.
Lori Loughlin were indicted for it. But it was a scheme that went far beyond them, and it involved a lot of people. It involved very privileged, very wealthy people getting their kids into Ivy League schools who didn't deserve to get into them, saying that they were polo players or that they had gotten test scores, SAT scores that they had not even taken the test. Singer had a network of people inside colleges, some outside colleges, that were all working together to give these already very privileged kids a leg up. And it outraged a lot of people just in and of itself. It was cheating and it was corrupt, but also because at the same time, people were faulting, saying that people of color were the ones getting the leg up and it was all affirmative action and they were being given opportunities they didn't deserve. In any event, he pled guilty. He got 3 years in jail. He was released to a halfway house about a year ago. And I think it seems as though the timing isn't clear from the reporting on the story, but it seems as though he immediately upon being released set up a new company doing this very same consulting. So the natural reaction is to be outraged when you hear that he's being allowed to do this. But I think what Judge Casper did made a lot of sense. What she said was that she was not going to deprive him of the right to make a living in his chosen profession. But what he would have to do is that on his website, and specifically in writing to any current clients or future clients, he would have to give a very lengthy statement. And it would include all of the details about him pleading guilty to these federal charges. And then it goes into very explicit detail about what he did. Bribing standardized test proctors and administrators to engage in cheating on college entrance exams, falsifying students' academic transcripts by paying third parties to take classes in their names, falsifying their college applications with fake awards, athletic activities, fabricated essays, bribing coaches, bribing administrators. I mean, it's really very specific. So in other words, what she's saying is, go ahead. Try to make a living. And if colleges and universities still want to have their name attached to you, shame on them. If people want to still hire you, shame on them. It won't be without knowing that you're a cheat and a fraud and a convicted felon. But I'm not going to give you the opportunity to say that we are somehow depriving you of making a living, because the living he's seeking is not in and of itself criminal. He's not a mobster. He's not saying, let me loan shark. Or let me extort people. He's saying, I want to be a college consultant, which is not in and of itself illegal. She's just making sure that people who do business with him do so knowingly.
But didn't it say in the same story by NBC News that as of Tuesday morning, when the reporter wrote the story, the statement wasn't on the website?
Now that's the part the other part that I found very interesting. So that's why I said the way the story is reported, the timing isn't clear, but it seems as though he has clearly established this business. It clearly has a website, and this statement should have gone up at the same time the website went live.
Yeah.
It didn't, which to me says that he opens himself up for further prosecution for contempt of court, if nothing else, or if he's on parole, if he was released early and is on parole, for a parole violation. So by not putting this statement, she just made this ruling on Monday.
Yeah.
So I would think that as soon as the ruling comes down, you are obligated to put that statement word for word on the website. That apparently hasn't happened. I think that opens him up to further prosecution.
Okay, so Marjorie read from the NBC News story that it hadn't been up as of Tuesday. Today would be Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
It isn't up as of Thursday. Let me tell you what is up in its place. Why hire us? Our extensive track record speaks volumes about our expertise and commitment to helping students in their academic dreams, with 100% direct referrals over the last decade. So they were able to get that up in 3 days. They were unable to get up this. And the only way I'd be okay, I understand your position. I'd be okay with a statement about all the crimes if the final line that he has to post, according to the judge, says, and I'm likely to commit a crime on your behalf too, based on history. If that was included...
There might have been a bridge too far for a judge to presume, but I think you're absolutely right, and I think it's up to the court. if contempt is what would be sought here, because this is a condition of his being allowed to do this, it's either a parole violation or a brand new crime of contempt, or both. And they should be pursuing this with all deliberate speed.
Yeah, I agree.
You know what I always wondered in the Varsity Blues case? I mean, some of the kids did not know that their parents were interceding on their behalf in an illegal way, but some of them had to know. I mean,
there's that great interview with that kid. She said, I didn't know I played polo and was an All-American. No, I'm making that up.
You know what I mean? I mean, that's a pretty sort.
None of the kids were prosecuted.
No, the kids weren't prosecuted. But you said to yourself, you're 18 and your grades are like mediocre, and you get into University of Southern California. I guess has become very difficult to get into, and it was one of the schools that they mentioned over and over. And you think, wow. You know what I mean? It would really do a number on your self-esteem and certainly your view of your parents.
Yeah.
Right?
Well, that's particularly true because keep in mind that at least for some of these kids, these are kids that have been coasting their entire lives with the help of their parents. They well know that if anything goes wrong, you just go to mommy and daddy and they can either buy you out of it or persuade people or use their influence. So this is something I think at least with regard to some of them, they had come to expect that they were deserving of a leg up. It is what you are entitled to by virtue of your birth. I think
a lot of those kids are probably saying to mommy and daddy now, Mommy, could you please hire that felon man, the guy who went to jail or was sentenced to 3.5 years in prison?
Goldman Sachs.
Okay, so let's stay with the horror of the legal system. I know you don't think that was a horror. We don't agree with you, but we respect your opinion, of course. So the Justice Department of the United States has started a criminal investigation into James Comey, the former head of the FBI. And we know why that is, because the big boss who is running the Department of Justice, that would be Donald Trump, doesn't like Jim Comey. Well, apparently, not only does he not like Jim Comey, he also doesn't like Jim Comey's daughter, who totally coincidentally or not, was not only involved in the prosecution for the Southern District in New York, I think, of Sean Diddy Combs recently, but it was also involved in the prosecution of Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, his collaborator. Her name is Maureen Comey. This is clearly, I know while the New York Times story that we read tries to play it right down the middle, this is clearly another political firing of an experienced, competent prosecutor, so that because it's part of his retaliation campaign. Yes?
It actually serves a number of his purposes. It's part of his retaliation campaign against her father.
Yeah.
It's also because she knows where all the bodies are buried with regard to Epstein.
Good point.
And Trump is all over the Epstein stuff, and he's now trying to distance himself, and it's creating, I guess, a problem within his base and for his attorney general. But she has a great deal of knowledge about his wrongdoing. For him, I think retaliation always sort of leads the path, but I think it also serves additional purposes to get rid of her. But here's the part that I think she might have been a co-chief of this particular unit that she's in. Now, traditionally, in the DOJ, in order to prevent corruption, in order to prevent people from becoming susceptible to bribes, you can a president can remove the U.S. attorney, can remove the chiefs of bureaus, right, and install his or her own people. Mm-hmm. But rank and file AUSAs have a great deal of insulation from being fired, are thought of as people who cannot be fired because they're not supposed to be political fodder. Now, he could remove her. If she is, in fact, a co-chief of this unit, he could take her out of that position. But to fire her as a rank-and-file AUSA, to me, is highly anomalous in the DOJ, especially since, it can happen if it happens for cause. Clearly, if you've done something illegal, the DOJ, you can be fired from the DOJ. But if there's an internal process that usually ensues there, and you go through the Office of Professional Responsibility, they're not giving any reasons for why she was fired. And if her firing was justified, it would have to be for cause, and they would at least put down what the cause, or be public about the cause for which she was fired, which goes to your point. It is an entirely retaliatory and political firing, and they're just going to They're going to do it, and they're going to deal with whatever she does, whether she sues the DOJ, because they think it is better to have her gone than to deal with a lawsuit or anything that might come from firing her.
You know, Andrea, I've asked this question in other contexts of other people when there are injustices like that. People remember this is the Southern District of New York office, which is generally seen as the jewel of the U.S. attorney's offices around the country. I think people remember that a very conservative head of that office, I think her name was Danielle Sassoon, resigned, as did other people, because the clear felony case against Eric Adams, the current mayor of New York City, who's running for re-election. The dismissal was ordered so that he could, quote, not have to worry about that while he's helping Donald Trump deport people from Manhattan or whatever the thing was. Now we have this, a competent colleague. You worked in prosecutors' offices. How do the remaining people stay? I don't mean people who are all trumped up, but the careerists who really care about fairness and justice and impartiality. How do you keep working in a place like this when you see your colleagues either picked off or being forced to resign because they actually stand for something?
Jim, I ask myself that all the time, and those are the people that I really feel for, because you do feel torn. You feel, based on all of the work you've done in your career and why you went there, why you stay there, that maybe you can continue to do the right thing if you stay. But the real lesson of history is that you're not going to be allowed to. No matter how inclined you are, you're not going to be allowed to. This is a level of corruption of the DOJ, which, admittedly, we saw some of it when Alberto Gonzales was the AG, and he was a pro-torture guy under Bush. But it really went steroidal under Bill Barr. And we're now seeing an even accelerated version of this, an absolute corruption of the DOJ and its basic mission, and a sullying of all of its prior work under Trump. I don't know how people do it. I think it has to be absolutely demoralizing. For some people, it's a question of, I guess you could always go to a law firm or you could go someplace else. It shouldn't be too difficult to get a job as an attorney coming out of the DOJ, if you don't wait too long, obviously. But I think it's hard for people who really believe in the mission and really want to do good work. I'm sure that's why, after everything that happened with her father, I'm sure that's why Maureen Comey stayed. Because she believed in what she was doing, and she didn't want to turn her back on it, and she just made the determination she was going to do it for as long as she could, do the best work she could for as long as she could, and represent the country to her best ability for as long as she could. But these are circumstances that make it absolutely impossible. They are literally walking into courtrooms, misleading judges, lying to judges, making arguments that are so spurious on their face that they're a disgrace to the DOJ. I genuinely don't know how people who genuinely want to do this work for the right reasons are able to stay there. And I think that's part of this, is the intentional forcing of resignations. You're either going to be, the administration's made this very clear. You're either with us or you're against us.
Right.
If you're against us, we'll get rid of you one way or the other. We'll either make it impossible for you to stay here, or we'll just outright fire you and deal with the consequences if you decide to sue us.
Yeah, and so any prosecution of Donald Trump by anybody, if you are that prosecutor, you're probably going to lose your job.
You are going to lose your job.
Maybe in the middle of the prosecution. And I was also saying before to Jim, I'm sure she's a very fine attorney, and the Comeys, I'm sure, are not broke. But how hard is it to get another job when you are someone that's marked by Donald Trump? I guess you have to go to one of the law firms that's standing up for him.
That's a great answer to your own question. That's where you go.
Because I think a lot of people would be afraid to hire you because you are a blackballed person. It reminds me of the McCarthy era, right? Could you get, when you're an actor that was singled out as being a communist, even whether you were a communist or not, you weren't going to be in any pictures.
Yeah, no, I think that's an excellent point. Well, I think that there are certainly, we have nothing if not an abundance of good law firms in the United States of America. So I don't think it's impossible to find a job. But yes, are there firms that have already bent the knee to him? have acted with utter cowardice, who wouldn't hire them. I think that's absolutely true, but I also think that those are the very same firms that none of these people, like Maureen Comey, would even go to be hired, because they already know where those law firms stand and where they'll fall in the history of how the law stood up against Trump or didn't.
Do well tomorrow, Andrea. We'll be listening.
That's right.
Thank you. Have fun, guys. Bye.
See you.
Yeah, thank
Take
you
care.
very much for filling in for us, Andrew. We much appreciate it. We've been speaking with former Suffolk County Sheriff Andrea Cabral, and she's going to be with Sue O'Connell tomorrow. They'll be great together at the library, because Jim and I have the day off. Coming up after this quick break, Boston Globe business columnist Shirley Leung. She's going to talk about all these national chains coming to Boston's Chinatown, which used to be more of a mom and pop type restaurant place, as well as Tom Menino, how he got the Boston Convention Center off the ground to where it is now in South Boston, now named after him. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Trusted, local news.
The state's top public health official says hospital capacity in Massachusetts has stabilized for the first time in years.
GBH News.
The MBTA has announced they're moving forward with a major renovation of Back Bay Station.
Here for what matters to you.
Several greater Boston communities are recovering after heavy rain that led to flash flooding in some areas.
GBH 89.7. Online at gbhnews.org.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And M&M Skylights, offering the full range of Velux skylight products, installation, and maintenance services to customers from Boston to Portland and surrounding areas. More information at mmskylights.com. And the Cape Playhouse in Dennis Village. Audiences can experience the lavish elegance and mystery of Anastasia the Musical, now playing. Tickets at capeplayhouse.com.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're live at the library tomorrow. As you heard, Andrea Cabral and Sue O'Connell will be sitting in for us. We're joined now by Shirley Leung. Whoops, there she is. Shirley is the business columnist for the Boston Globe, host of the fabulous Say More podcast, and a BPR contributor. Hey, Shirley.
Hi.
Hi.
Hey, Shirley, great to talk to you. So you wrote this great column about Chinatown now, sort of being, what we think of it, kind of mom and pop type restaurants and little corner places being overrun now by national chains. Tell us.
Yeah. I've been noticing this, over the last few years, where every time there's a new, restaurant or shop in Chinatown, it's often a bubble tea shop. And what you learn is that a lot of them are chains. I mean, they're global chains. They're coming out of Taiwan or China, not just bubble tea shops, but you'll see a proliferation of hot pot.
Yes.
Too, and often they are also from China. And what I learned was that a lot of these chains want to come into Boston, and they want to be in Chinatown, and it's putting a squeeze on kind of the truly independent, mom and pops who have opened restaurants there and bakeries there, and they want to stay there, but they're competing with these literally global chains in terms of rents.
Yeah,
and the impact it has. You and I were lucky enough to meet this woman, Grace Young, who is the authority on Chinatowns in America. She was on our show. You interviewed her in a great thing at Tracy Chang's restaurant last year, an AAPI dinner at Pagu, Tracy's restaurant. Here's Grace Young, this James Beard Award winner and cookbook author, last year talking about family business aspect of Chinatowns across the country. Here's Grace.
Chinatowns are all about mom and pop. So San Francisco has 1,000 family-owned businesses.
That's so?
Wow.
Wow.
New York City, 94% of the businesses are mom and pop.
Wow. In Chinatown, we're talking
in
about.
Chinatown. And America used to be all about mom and pop. But now, especially because of the pandemic, we are a scroll and click society. But when you go into Chinatown, it's a reminder of your humanity. Right, some of these are multi-generational businesses, and Chinatown, the profit margins are razor thin.
So that's a great risk here. I mean, she said it so beautifully, as did you, frankly. I mean, they really are at great risk. So what's to be done? I mean, just patronize them, right?
Patronize them, know, which ones are mom and pops, which ones are chains, do a little homework. When I was going through the story, my editor asked me, like, is there anything the city can do? Are there regulations that could be set up, or during, a time when you're going through zoning, can you make sure that there's a certain percentage set aside for local and small businesses? So that, I think that discussion needs to be had at some level. You can't, one of the things I also learned too is that I always thought that, Chinatown, you see empty storefronts. There's like, they must struggle to fill these storefronts. But it turns out, in talking to real estate brokers, actually Chinatown, they have some of the highest rents in the region. Yeah. Only the Seaport is higher, only Newbury's higher, Harvard Square is higher. Think because it's a very small neighborhood.
Yeah.
Right? And
it's gentrifying.
It's right, and also it's a very small footprint. And if you want to appeal to certain consumers who want to look for Asian food, or be in a cluster of Asian restaurants or merchants, there's really only one place in the city. It's Chinatown. More now we're starting to see other kind of suburban Chinatowns like Quincy and Malden, and that's what you're also starting to see. Some of the mom and pops going there because the rents are cheaper.
So on a related note, when you were talking to Deborah First, one of the food critics at your paper, the Boston Globe, on your Say More podcast, were you in Chinatown? Were you doing a dim sum thing when you were talking? Where was that?
Yeah, so we went to the newly renovated China Pearl, which is finally open after 5 years, and we decided to have dim sum there, and then we recorded a podcast in a private room there. But have either of you gone to China Pearl yet?
Not the new one.
No.
I've been there a million times. In the old, this is Brian Moy, right? Who we had on the show recently. Right. There's the China Pearl in Quincy,
which is closed now for renovation.
Oh, I didn't know that.
But the one in Chinatown finally opened. It closed in February 2020. It was probably the first restaurant closed in the city of Boston because of the pandemic. And it's transformed. It does not look like the old China Pearl. I think they even created windows. Maybe the windows were boarded up or something, or covered up. You walk in and you notice the sunlight everywhere.
No, the windows were not boarded up. There were no windows. When you climbed up to the second floor, there were no windows. You guys talked about something we talked about with no expertise. There's the Michelin guide coming to Boston. Here's a little bit of that conversation between Shirley and Deborah First.
So how big of a deal is it for Boston restaurants to be in a Michelin guide?
I think it's a huge deal, and I think it's a huge deal probably not for the reasons that most people would think of it as being a huge deal. But what makes it actually exciting, I think, is just the impetus that it provides for people who have been sort of running a restaurant for however long. There's only so many things that you can aim for, and to have a new goal and a new driver and a new ambition.
Yeah, it's kind of like a Pulitzer Prize or something in the restaurant business. Is that what she was talking about?
That's right. It kind of raises the bar. It was very interesting. I didn't even think about that, because usually the Michelin guide rolls out in cities to drive tourists, right? To bring tourists into Boston to eat at the restaurants, stay at the hotels. But what Deborah was saying, that for the locals, for us, it forces restaurants and chefs to raise their game, because what's happening is the way Michelin guide works is that these quote unquote inspectors, they secretly eat at your restaurant. So you don't know who is eating at your restaurant when. And so you want to make sure that your dishes are always hot, they're always creative. You've constantly tried to be the best in the city, and so I didn't even think about that. Now, one thing that Deborah said, she actually thought that she has a love-hate relationship with Michelin. Before she's like, oh, we don't need it, and now she's like, now it's a bit of a pay-to-play system.
Exactly.
Some cities pay, and the Tourism Bureau here is paying, I think, close to $1 million.
You wrote that, didn't you? Write that a few months ago?
For Michelin to come for the next 3 years. And so what's starting to happen is a lot of cities are paying. And so Boston, feels is left out if we don't also pay and be part of, and our restaurants aren't part of this Michelin guide. But she was saying on the podcast, she thought actually the restaurant scene was better in Boston 10 years ago. You probably would have gotten more, better ratings if the inspectors were here 10 years ago. But she's glad that they're here now, and she's hoping that the restaurant scene will be better as a result of having.
I think the restaurant scene is fabulous in Boston. You go to a lot of restaurants too. Don't you think it's? I don't know versus 10 years ago. Don't you think it's great, especially the local non-chain restaurants are fabulous.
It is great. And I mean we've come a long way over the last 20, 25 years. The only thing is that it's very expensive to eat out. I mean, and I think that's true everywhere, but it's very.
Well, you think about Chinatown. We had Lucy Whiteman, who's known as Princess Cheyenne, most famous stripper in Boston's history, in her a couple of weeks ago.
Great new memoir.
You think when you used to work down Chinatown, because the Herald, where I worked for years, was right next to Chinatown. Yeah. You would walk down to Chinatown, and you were talking mom and pop. You're talking the chickens hanging in the windows. There you go into the restaurants, and they were all these great places. But then a block over was all the peep shows and the naughty places on Washington Street, which you were afraid to walk through. I think a lot of people were, even at noontime. Because it was a very tough neighborhood. That is all.
For other people, it was two great things in one place, Marjorie. It depended on your point of view.
I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, Shirley, speaking of great restaurants, a week or so ago, I went on 2 nights in a row, went to restaurants in the Seaport. And the reason I bring that up is because I've been critical through the years about how the Seaport. Don't make a face. Well,
the Seaport.
They were great. I'll tell you about them in a second.
You should get Deborah first job. He could be doing all the criticism.
One of the reasons why the Seaport is like it is, the good and the bad, and there's plenty of bad, by the way, is because of what Tom Menino did, and now he has formal recognition. You wrote about this. It's now the Menino.
Yes, the Thomas Michael Menino Convention Center in South Boston. Yeah. This is the massive, what we usually call the BCEC. Right. Boston Convention Exhibition Center. It's the big convention center in the South Boston waterfront, and it was actually really, it was just renamed officially this past Saturday in his honor, and it was fun. I remember talking to Menino about the Seaport, and I covered him towards the last couple terms, and he really championed the Seaport. Yeah. But I wasn't here in the very early days before it was just parking lots, completely parking lots. And it was really
the no-name restaurant, Pier 4, maybe legal, Moakley Courthouse, and about 400 parking lots.
Weird is and the Seaport, the hotel, the Seaport, hotel there. And so it was interesting reading the clips, and you hear from time to time about the megaplex, right? Bob Kraft.
Right.
Wanting to build the football stadium on the Boston waterfront. And Menino was like, no, I really want a convention center. And so he stood his ground. And so when he first became mayor in 1993, this was one of the first things he placed a big bet on. He said, we need to have the convention center on the South Boston waterfront. We do not need a football stadium. So he championed this despite, he fought, at the time, Governor Weld, Weld and Bob Kraft paired up. They wanted the stadium in South Boston, but, Menino stood his ground and he found allies. It was hard, but I think they ultimately sued each other, but he found allies in South Boston, in the politicians and the residents. And so today, that's why the Seaport is the way it is today. He said, listen, I want the convention center there because it will be a catalyst for the economic development of restaurants coming to the Seaport and other buildings. Because if you just built a stadium, those parking lots that we all remember back in the day, there still might just be parking lots in the Seaport district because they would only be active on game days, 10 times a year. And so now you have Amazon there, you have the ICA there, you have tons of restaurants there. And so a lot of that credit goes to Menino, not just not standing his ground in the convention center, but believing in the vision of the Seaport. And he passed away 2014?
2014, yeah.
Yeah, Seaport was just taking off.
Yeah.
it's hard to remember that, right? I mean, but a lot of those buildings went up just in the last decade.
The only problem with going to the seaport is unless you're really wealthy, you have to park in Acton. I mean, that's
well, that's the joke. You know, when they put the federal down to cover a trial, and you had a choice among about 5,000 parking spaces,
really,
down there.
Right.
Then 2 months later, you come down to the next trial, and there were only 1,000 parking spaces. And then 2 months later, there was like 20 parking spaces. It went up so fast, and now you got to park. What does it cost you? $40 to park?
It's a lot.
Yeah, downtown.
It's a lot.
It's
a lot.
expensive. It's really changed quickly.
By the way, I'm sorry. Go ahead. You go ahead.
I was going to say one of the things I've been writing about is there's it's almost like we overbuilt the seaport. There's too many kind of office towers, not enough residential, not enough open space. There's an opportunity to build even more, have more space. I think about what's happening in parts of East Boston. The park, the parkland is right on the water.
Yeah.
And right now, it's for condo owners.
No, we kind of goofed it up, I think. A lot of people think and don't forget David Abel's great documentary that calls it the Inundation District, because it risks being underwater very soon, all those buildings.
So since
scary.
so many of you are deeply concerned about what the two restaurants I ate at, since they're both great,
Here we go.
it's a new Korean place called Nowon, Nowon, which is spectacular. And thanks to the other food person at the Boston Globe, I read a review about Mr. H.
Oh,
and,
yes.
Have you been there? Cara Baskin.
I haven't. That's a Chinese restaurant,
Chinese,
right?
and it is terrific. They're both they're both great. So
great. I know about Mr. H, but not about the Korean place.
Yeah, Nowon. It's really.
Jim is like a restaurant ambassador. He's been to all the restaurants all around Boston.
Thank you.
He can tell us all where to go, what to eat, what to have for appetizers.
I just realized both of them are sort of mini chains too. After I rail against chains. So much for, but they're in the seaport, so I guess it's okay. We only have a minute or so left, but could you at least tease your terrific interview with the head of Children's Hospital? And the reason I'm asking you to do it is because obviously hospitals and great ones like this are really both in the firing line and in the spotlight because of the nightmares coming out of Washington. We only have a minute or so, but at least tease what you guys talked about.
Yeah, this was Dr. Kevin Churchwell. He's been the head of Boston Children's Hospital. And what struck me about my conversation with him was that, it's almost like another pandemic, for hospitals, Now, the time I interviewed him, this was before it was official that Medicaid was being gutted. And so, but he knew that's coming. So he's facing it all fronts, not only cuts in Medicaid, but also cuts in research, because Children's Hospital is a big research institution. Yeah. But he seemed pretty. For someone with there's a lot happening. One of his quotes was like, panic is for wimps. So he's holding steady, and in many ways for hospitals, they've just been through this with the pandemic, so they kind of know how to kind of operate in crisis mode.
You know what's most heartening about this? We talk to Michael Curry almost every week about his health equity work through the Health Equity Compact. There's a big hearing this week. Churchill's vocal and passionate commitment in his interview with you to continuing those equity campaigns within healthcare was great.
But Shirley, here's what I wish these people would do at places like Children's Hospital, because when people talk about, they hear, Harvard, Trump's going after Harvard, they go, who cares? Harvard can withstand it. What they need to do is run ads on Fox News or these podcasters of children who can talking about their battle with like cystic fibrosis, which thanks to a lot of the stuff they've done at Harvard hospitals, you would be dead as a teenager if you got cystic fibrosis as a child. Now you can live, and you might live way into adulthood. Real stories. So people say, that's all over now. We're not doing this now. And so people understand the impact of stopping this research on everybody's health. We're all going to get sick and die. And it'd be nice if you were a little less sick and could live a little longer. But we knocked it all off.
No, you're absolutely right. It's children. So much innovation comes out of children's. Maybe that's the way. Maybe that's the way at getting some of these cuts reversed.
I don't know. I hope so, because it's really horrible what's happening with them.
Podcast is great. The interview with Churchill is great. Everything is good on your front, Shirley. It's good to see you. Be well.
All right.
Thank you, Shirley.
Try Mr. H.
Bye.
See ya.
We've been speaking with Shirley Leung, the great business columnist for the Boston Globe and host of the Say More podcast, on which you can hear her interview with the guy that runs Children's Hospital, and it's a great interview. Say More is the name of the podcast. Thanks, Shirley. Coming up after a quick break, 2 lawyers explain the ongoing strike for higher pay for lawyers who represent the poor that has left thousands of defendants without representation and left some pretty dangerous people get out of jail. I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR and 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Rare earths are now so coveted, some people are stockpiling them in vaults. It's a response to Beijing's near monopoly on refining the elements.
They're installing what you might call a tap system where they can turn that tap on and off.
I'm Elsa Chang. How China developed such a stranglehold on rare earths on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you. And GM Roth Design Remodeling. Dreams delivered. With custom kitchens, bathrooms, and additions. Serving New England for over 39 years. Learn more at gmroth.com. And the Museum of Science, presenting the new exhibit, Perception Playground, which explores how your brain shapes your understanding of reality. Tickets at mos.org.
Welcome back to BPR, Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're live at the library tomorrow. Marjorie and I are off. Sue O'Connell, Andrea Cabral filling in for us. And at 1 o'clock, we're going to talk to May Pang, who had an amazing 18-month relationship with John Lennon, and she has beautiful photographs from it that'll be on display this weekend. There's a documentary, too. May will join us at 1 o'clock. For more than a month, over 2,500 court-appointed attorneys across the Commonwealth have stopped working. They're refusing to accept new clients until they receive better wages. Their base pay is roughly $65 an hour. In other New England states, comparable work is rewarded at twice the rate, which is still not enough in my estimation. As this stoppage continues, thousands of defendants are in limbo without the constitutionally mandated representation they're entitled to, as already overloaded courts are forced to let some accused, some of serious crimes, released. At the start of the strike, we spoke with Mara Dolan. She's a public defender, member of the Massachusetts Governor's Council. She's back with us today, public defender in a generic way. I'll explain that in a minute. And we're also joined by Jennifer O'Brien, a criminal defense attorney and a state-funded bar advocate. She runs O'Brien Law Offices in Billerica, Mass. Pleasure to meet you, Jennifer. Mara, it's great to see you. Thanks both for being here.
Thanks for having us. Well, I think there's a lot of confusion, Mara, so hopefully you can straighten this out right at the start, between the bar advocates and public defenders. So what's the deal?
They do the same work. So they defend people who cannot afford to hire their own attorney, who've been charged with a crime that could result in their having to serve jail time if convicted. They're all supervised by the Committee for Public Counsel Services, which is known as CPCS. They all get the same training. They all get the same supervision. But some are staff attorneys, and some, the bar advocates, are independent contractors. And we get to decide whether we're going to take a case or not.
And you, from what I've read,
we do 80%.
Yeah,
yes.
80% of it.
Yes.
Okay. And
you go ahead.
No, go ahead. So the issue is that for such little money, well, you explain what the issue is. Why is the strike going on?
Well, the issue is really, it's twofold. It's money, obviously. We're independent contractors, so there are other states that, some of which are bordering us, that pay double what we pay. So attorneys are going to those other states. They're saying, why not drive 15 minutes in the other direction and, to Rhode Island or New Hampshire and make double what I'm making? And the second is I think the whole program it's in crisis, right? There before this work stoppage, and we're calling it a work stoppage, but we are actually still working. We're just not taking new cases, because we are independent contractors. We'd never abandon our current clients. But the right to counsel has been in crisis in the state because it hasn't been adequately funded. So there's not a lot of new attorneys that are willing to do this type of work. The attorneys who have been around a lot are going to other states. There are people, I do appeals as well, and there are people, before this whole thing even started, there are people on the appeals list who are waiting a year for an attorney. You have a constitutional right to an appeal, so some of them are sentenced to jail. They're sitting in jail, and it's a year before they can even talk to an attorney about what their appealable issues are.
And meanwhile, they are incarcerated.
So it's a problem that we're trying to highlight. It does come down to money, because we have dedicated people who want to do this job, but the state hasn't funded it. So now there aren't enough people doing this.
And by the way, let me just say, since neither of you have, is even if they were to double your rate and get it in the range of neighboring states' lawyers doing what you're doing, that's still well below the standard rate that attorneys can get in the private sector. You don't have to do this. You do this because you choose to participate in the system of justice. Could you explain what the consequence of you not taking new clients, Mara, is? What's happened in terms of the right to release? How many people have been released? What's going on?
The consequences are terrible. Constitutional rights are being violated. You have a right under the Constitution to an attorney. And these are folks who don't have attorneys. We're now, around 3,000 people who've been arraigned without an attorney. And don't forget, you are innocent until you are proven guilty. That is 3,000 innocent people who do not have attorneys. The SJC recently implemented what's called the La Valley Protocol, and under that, if someone has been in custody for longer than 7 days without counsel, they are released. If they've had a case open for longer than 45 days without counsel, that case is dismissed. Now, it is dismissed without prejudice, which means it could be brought again. But the consequences are terrible.
And by the way, some people who've been accused of very violent crimes, and as you say, accused, but still nevertheless accused.
Well, the guy in the Globe who was accused of nearly strangling, which is the last step before murdering outright, his very pregnant wife, he was released.
He's out on the street.
So I didn't understand on that. Maybe you can explain to me, Jennifer. I know they almost never do dangerousness hearings. Bill Well was...
Oh, yes, they do.
Okay.
All the time.
They happen all the time.
They happen all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because I've read that they don't do them enough, but maybe I'm wrong. But I don't understand, because what happens to the pregnant wife? This guy's out of jail. He just nearly killed her, allegedly. Mm-hmm. Maybe he didn't. But I would be a little bit nervous about him.
Well, they can release him with certain conditions. So they have to let him out, but they can say that you have to stay away from the alleged victim in the case.
I think he's on a GPS. I think that
he's
guy
on a
is
GPS.
Yeah.
Yep, they can do
thing.
that.
Yeah.
She could. I don't know if she got a restraining order against him, but she could have applied.
So if he
for a
becomes within
restraining
100
order.
feet, the beeper will go off, or something like that, or she'll be notified, or something like that.
Well, she wouldn't, but yes, the people, the GPS, the eye in the sky, they'll know that.
But
he's
practically
close to her.
speaking,
what if you live next door and you're a woman? I'm sure you wouldn't feel crazy about that circumstance.
Well, what I'm saying is, in practical terms, she'd be petrified, because if he's that allegedly that violent, he's probably not going to be necessarily stopped, as we see in domestic violence cases all the time. You could say, the hell with the GPS. By the time they get here, she could be getting strangled again. I mean, that's the state we're at.
Okay, so Mara, I have a question for you. If you had to choose, you're somebody who's now an elected official. Mm-hmm. If you had to choose, you're a legislator in Beacon Hill, between funding a pickleball court for $50,000, an indoor bocce court in the North End for $50,000, or a $35,000 state money, my money, your money, for a robot lawnmower, or adequately funding lawyers for indigent defendants, which would you choose?
It's a trick question, Jim.
It is a trick question. So in all seriousness, there was some money, not enough, in the budget that just was signed by Governor Healy. The Senate acted, from what I understand. Ultimately, it was pulled. I'm not clear why. Maybe you know. So is Beacon Hill's position that we'll just let this situation rot?
No.
So what is their position?
No, I have to say, I very much appreciate Governor Healy has made a public statement in the last week. She said that bar advocates deserve to be paid a fair wage.
She can't do anything until they put a bill on her desk.
Yeah, but she has said that she's going to work with the legislature to try to get this resolved as quickly as possible. I believe that is in fact happening.
Why didn't they resolve in the budget?
I don't really have the answer to that, but we're hopeful that it's going to be resolved soon.
Do you know something you're not sharing with us?
Who, me?
Exactly, no, you do.
I'm going to tell you.
Does it sound like, is the deal imminent? Is that what you're saying?
I am hopeful. We're hopeful. We're hopeful.
But Jennifer, haven't I been hearing for years about public defenders who get out of law school, a lot of whom have very serious student loans.
Yes.
I'm sure law school is not cheap. Public defenders and or bar advocates tending bar on the weekends, waiting tables on Friday nights because they can't make enough money to pay the rent.
Yeah, yes, it's to supplement your income. It's difficult to, it's probably impossible to just do bar advocate work and pay your student loans and pay a mortgage. So people do supplement with other things. But it sucks you in, right? You can say, well, I'm going to just do this on the side. I'll take, a couple of cases. And before you know it, you have 140 cases, and this is your full-time job.
Did we say what people are getting an hour? Have we said that yet?
Well, it's 65 depending. That's the starting thing.
Yes, for district court, it's 65,
okay.
Yes.
And it goes up for Superior Court?
Superior Court is $85 an hour, and murder or homicide is $120 an hour.
You know what the other concern is?
And when you think about the comparison between what other people in other professions, like a therapist, can you find a therapist for $85?
No, but people doing exactly what they're doing, as we discussed, in neighboring states are making twice as much money, give or take. The other thing you're not talking about, and I'm sure you talk about with yourselves, is we are living in an era where there's total disrespect for the judicial system coming out of the most important office in this country. And it seems to me, despite your defense, Mara, about how the legislature is a minute away from doing the right thing, by not acting quickly, they're feeding into that notion that our justice system is not really that important. The people who represent indigent defendants who are entitled to it under the Constitution of the United States of America aren't important enough to be adequately paid. We'll get to it when we get to it, which trickles down to have even more disrespect. Am I wrong?
I do appreciate all the people coming together. I really do. At the same time, it has been personally heartbreaking to me, and I'm sure it has been to many others, to think that people in Massachusetts are being denied their constitutional right to an attorney.
Right, and the people who've chosen, even though they don't have to represent those people at below average wages, you guys don't deserve enough respect to be adequately paid. What does it feel like to you? How long have you been doing this?
27 years.
27 years you've decided to work at under going wage to allow people to have their constitutional rights met.
Yes.
How does it feel when...
It feels disrespectful, and that's why I stopped taking new cases, because I said, what are we doing? When you look at what our pay has been and the increases in pay in the past 21 years, it's a 71-cent increase over time when you average the increase.
71 cents.
So I said, what company would I ever work for? And they give you 71 cents at the end of the year and you go back the next year. I said, we're crazy. I'm crazy and I'm not doing it. And that snowballed into others doing the same.
We have a good question from Jeff in Cambridge. A texter wants to know how much it costs to keep people in jail, which the state has to pay for unnecessarily while they're waiting to get their representation. That's a lot of money, isn't it?
It is a lot of money.
Yeah.
Yep.
Many
Absolutely.
thousands.
How long have you been doing this?
17 years.
Are there people like you who've decided, whether we get this raise or not, I've had enough, I can't go through these struggles, or people stay on the course?
I think that there are people who are going to leave. There are people who are leaving. We don't have enough folks. The chair of the board of the Suffolk Lawyers for Justice publicly said there was a time that they had 400 bar advocates and a waiting list. They now have 300 bar advocates and no waiting list. We simply do not have enough attorneys to do this work. We are actually being bar advocates and advocating for the bar.
Yeah.
And again, I'm going to be a broken record, but besides people's constitutional rights, there are all these people who, like that pregnant women, who have had violent attacks on them.
Victims have a right to have their day in court as well, and this is affecting victims,
Yeah,
not
what do you
just
hear,
the
what do
people
you,
charged
what do you hear
with
from
crimes.
victims? Do you hear any stories?
Well, the victims don't come to me.
I guess they wouldn't come to you. You're on the wrong
They would come
side.
to the DA's
Yeah, that's
office.
right. That's right.
But we do represent victims. If someone has a case and they have a right under the Fifth Amendment not to testify in that case,
That's
it's
true.
bar advocates who advise them on their rights. So
That's true.
victims need us too.
So I assume the obvious answer as to what people should do is that if they care about this, they should call their rep or senator
Absolutely.
and do the
Yes.
right thing. Yeah. And it's when you, again, you don't want to tell us, but it sounds like something's happening behind the scenes. I hope it is. Is there any discussion about putting a system in place that doesn't require a crisis every time?
I can tell you, bar advocates are like most people. They're not Beacon Hill insiders. They don't know the budget cycle. They don't know about...
You do.
I do. They don't know about Joint Rule 10 and joint committees and all that stuff. They really want to learn this stuff so that this never happens again. We're committed to making sure this never happens again.
Well, what you do is really important. I know you know that, but everybody out there should know it as well. And we wish you luck, and we hope the legislature, can I be nice for a second? We hope the legislature does the right thing as rapidly as is humanly possible.
We do as well.
Great.
Thank
Good to
you.
see you both.
Thank you
Good
both.
luck.
We've been speaking with Mara Dolan. She's an attorney, and she's fighting on behalf of these public defenders. She's also a member of the Massachusetts Governor's Council, and Jennifer O'Brien, a criminal defense attorney and a state-funded bar advocate. Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, for 18 months in the mid-'70s, May Pang knew John Lennon more intimately than anybody else in the world. They worked together and they were lovers. Now she's touring an exhibit of her photography from that era with unbelievable pictures. She stops by the Bridge Gallery this weekend. We'll talk to May Pang next. I'm Marjorie Egan, he's Jim Browder. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
GBH thanks the Champion Circle's generous members, listeners in our community whose gifts of $900 or more make possible GBH's mission to provide quality local news on the radio. Learn more at gbh.org/Champion Circle.
Support for GBH comes from you. And the Peabody Essex Museum, presenting Knowing Nature, Stories of the Boreal Forest. Captivating photos and interactive displays take visitors inside a vast wilderness. Opens July 26th, PEM.org. And PNC Bank, who believes when you pay attention to the details, amazing things can happen. Like when you check the pockets of a jacket you haven't worn since last fall and find $20. PNC Bank, brilliantly boring since 1865.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Browder, head on Hour 3 of BPR. May Pang had an 18-month affair with John Lennon when she was in her early 20s and has some amazing photographs from that time. She joins us to discuss her new pop-up art installation featuring photos of her relationship and of John Lennon himself. It's going to appear in Cambridge at the Bridge Gallery this weekend and called The Lost Weekend, the photography of May Pang.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then it's Am I the A-Hole Day? If you're out to eat at a restaurant or at a dinner party with a group of people and your plate of food arrives first, are you an a-hole if you start eating it before everybody else is served? We all knew which side of the sticky issue Jim lands on, but where are you? Call or text Am I the A-Hole on BPR 89.7 GBH.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The House of Representatives will take up a package to cut funding for foreign aid and public media today. NPR's Lexi Shapitl has details.
The Senate voted early Thursday to pass an amended version of the package, which rescinds about $1 billion in funding for the Corporation of Public Broadcasting and more than $7 billion in foreign aid funding. Senators removed $400 million in cuts to PEPFAR, a program that funds HIV/AIDS treatment and prevention around the world, from the original House version of the bill. The measure passed the House narrowly last month after several Republican holdouts flipped their votes to support the package. A vote on final passage could take place as early as this evening. Ahead of the vote, Office of Management and Budget Director Russ Vought told reporters the administration will likely send additional rescissions packages to Congress once this one is across the finish line. Lexi Shapiro, NPR News, Washington.
Emil Bovie's nomination to be judge on the Third Circuit Court of Appeals has advanced to the full Senate for a vote over ethics concerns raised on both sides of the aisle. The GOP-led committee's decision to advance the Trump allies' nomination touched off verbal clashes as the chair, Chuck Grassley, proceeded.
We'll go to Bovie's nomination. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Chairman, point of personal privilege.
Mr. Chairman.
Later, Democratic Senator Cory Booker accused Grassley of circumventing Senate rules.
With all appeals to past jurisdiction and past precedent, why are you doing this? This is outrageous.
This is a kangaroo court. That's all we have here,
This
Mr.
is
Chairman.
wrong. To violate your own rules without going by the mandates of the parliamentarian. This is unbelievable.
All Democrats, except for Booker, left the hearing without voting on advancing Bovie's nomination. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky has nominated a new ambassador to the United States. As she awaits confirmation, he has appointed her as a special envoy for the development of cooperation with the United States. NPR's Polina Litvinova reports from Kyiv. She was previously the Minister of Justice and the Deputy Prime Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic integration.
In his post on social media, President Zelensky wrote Olga Stefanishina would work as the special envoy while, quote, all the necessary procedures for approving her candidacy for the position of ambassador of Ukraine to the United States with Washington are ongoing. Zelensky noted Stefanishina participated in negotiations with the U.S. on a new format of economic cooperation between the two countries and will keep working to maintain these relations. The new role for Stefanishina is part of Zelensky's proposed government reshuffle. Polina Litvinova, NPR News, Kyiv.
U.S. stocks are trading higher this hour. You're listening to NPR News.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Some T riders say they're frustrated by back-to-back shutdowns on a key portion of the Red Line. Starting at 8:30 this evening, trains will not stop in downtown Boston, with shuttle buses replacing service between JFK UMass and Kendall MIT. Caitlin Allen Conley is executive director of the advocacy group Transit Matters. She says she understands why riders are upset, but maintenance work that the T will do during the closure is essential.
A safe, reliable, and affordable transit system isn't just good for commuters, but it's essential for Massachusetts' economy, our climate goals, and quality of life.
The closure comes just after the T had to evacuate hundreds of passengers from a Blue Line train in a tunnel beneath Boston Harbor earlier this week. Alan Connolly says planned maintenance work like this will help prevent similar incidents in the future. And as Massachusetts braces for the impact of federal funding cuts, House leaders on Beacon Hill announced yesterday that they're putting in place a hiring freeze, citing what they call federal economic uncertainty in Washington. The Globe reports that House Human Resources Director Catherine Palmer described the freeze as temporary and proactive and said that it will not affect previously approved jobs or backfills for positions in the offices where a state representative has only one aide. And in sports, the Red Sox back in action tomorrow after the All-Star break. They're in Chicago for a series with the Cubs. We are looking at a hazy, hot and Henry day today, high-low 90s, but the heat index will make it feel like triple digits. 87 right now. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Live at the Boston Public Library tomorrow. Sue O'Connell and Andrea Cabral will be filling in for me and Jim. We'll have our live music Friday, our play, media analysis, and NPR's Eric Deggans talking about TV and much more. Hi, Jim.
Hey, Marjorie. So from the late 1973 through 1975, nobody knew John Lennon as closely as our next guest, May Pang. Originally hired in 1970 as a receptionist and assistant for Lennon and Yoko Ono, things took a turn a few years later when Ono came to Pang with a request. It's a little strange. Here's Pang explaining exactly what happened. It's taken from the documentary, which is terrific, about her life, titled The Lost Weekend, A Love Story.
I came to work one morning, and Yoko walked into my office at the Dakota and said, "John and I are not getting along, and I know he's going to start seeing other people, and I think I want you to go out with him because I know he needs someone nice like you." And it just sort of snapped me back into reality, and I said, "Excuse me?"
Excuse me? That film is available to stream now on services like Amazon, Apple TV. You can go to our website, Maypang, MAYPANG.com for more info. Pang is currently touring the country with an exhibit of photographs she took during her time with Lennon. And by the way, both the film and the photographs give you an insight into Lennon as a human being, unlike anything I've ever seen. This Friday through Sunday, you can see her exhibit at the Bridge Gallery in Cambridge. It's in Massachusetts Avenue off Mass Ave on the way to Arlington, and she'll be appearing there in person with the photographs Saturday and Sunday. May Pang joins us now on Zoom. May, it's great to meet you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
This is fun.
I just want to ditto what Jim said. The pictures are great, and the film of your love story. It was so much fun in so many sections. I mean, what a great time, the two of you.
Did you learn something? I mean, when you saw the film, was there a lot in there that you did not know? Or?
I'm embarrassed to say, I was a little girl watching the Beatles at Shea Stadium. I didn't know a lot of this, so I learned a lot. I learned a lot about you. I learned about him, about the relationship. I learned about his estrangement from his son, Julian. I didn't know a lot of this stuff. So it was a real eye-opener for me, but it was also really fun, and you had a great time. But just tell us how this happened. You're a teenage girl. You're growing up in Spanish Harlem, and you decide to go down to this building where there happened to be a certain record production company there. Tell us.
Well, I quit college. It wasn't for me. So they had those agencies back then, where they could send you to work. What could you do? I said, "Can you type? I said, "Sure, I could do all of that." Obviously, I could not. But I was going to do something. And so they sent me to this building, and I went for an interview at another company. After I walked out, I said I knew I wasn't going to get that job. But a friend of mine met me by the directory, and it said Apple Records. She said, "Do you know that's in this building?" And I said, "What? It's in this building?" And I looked at it. I recognized it, and I said, and she saw me walking away. She goes, "Where are you going?" I said, "I'm going to go ask them if they have a job opening." And she said to me, "You're crazy." I said, "What's wrong with asking them? I'm at zero, as I would say. I'm no better off. If they said no, then that's a no. But I'm not worse off, so I'm going to go and ask them for a job." And I just happened to ask them. I went upstairs. It was the 41st floor. And the woman behind the desk at the time, she was relieving the actual receptionist. And she said, "Can I help you?" And I said, "I'm looking for a job. Any job opening?" She said, "No." And I said, "Oh, okay." And I stood there like an idiot, and I'm staring at the wall, literally looking at the wall, looking around. And she looks at me finally. She's a little older, and she said, "Can I ask you what you're looking for? Can I help you with?" You're a little kid thinking, "Well, do the Beatles ever come here?" And she just chuckled. And she said, "No, they don't." And I said, "Okay." And then just at that moment, the universe has their plans for people, whether you believe it or not. At that moment, both sides, the two doors on either side of the desk where she was, opened up, and people are filing out, tons of them. And I'm looking like, what just happened? Are we evacuating the building? It made me nervous. And then I found out, because the woman who was so kind, she actually turned around and she goes, "This lady is looking for a job. Are there any opening?" And this guy turned around and said, "Yeah, why don't you come back after lunch?" And that was it. And I came back. I realized everybody was there for lunch. They were leaving. They were exiting the building. And I came back, and they asked me all those questions. Can you type? Sure. Can you answer? Sure. Can you do? And I could do nothing. So I taught myself on weekends. I wanted to be sure that was, that I could do something by the time they got me. But they liked me, obviously. They kept me on.
So you go from that job where you had no qualifications to being an assistant to two of the most famous people on the planet, John Lennon and Yoko Ono. Explain, May, some of the things you did in that capacity for Ono and Lennon.
Oh, my God. Well, it was definitely learn on the job situation because what they asked was never the norm. Answering phones, that's easy. But when they ask you to do things like my first, when I started to work for them for this project that they come to town, they wanted to make, it was her idea, it was 2 short films. One was called Fly and the other one was called Up Your Legs Forever. So she hands me her phone book and she says, here, call all these people, tell them I want them to come down and to donate their legs for peace. And I now had to, in my little mind, think, okay, I've got to convey all this when I get on the phone with somebody to say, hey, I work for John Lennon and Yoko Ono. Will you come down and donate your legs for peace? She's making a movie called Up Your Legs Forever. And then all we need to do is shoot you from your toes to your thighs, and that's it. And, people are stunned at the other end of the phone. They don't even know what to say. But she wanted 360 pairs of legs and shoot them it was similar to her previous movie, her other short called Bottoms, where she photographed everybody's bottom for 365 pairs of bottoms there. So that's what she did. And I mean, I had to call people like Peggy Guggenheim and Andy Warhol and Sid Bernstein and Jackie Kennedy. And I'm just calling their office cold saying, listen,
Yeah, but can I tell you something? That was great, but it wasn't as great as for the other movie you mentioned, Fly, where your responsibility was to go outside and capture flies and bring them in for the film.
How'd you do that? You had to capture a lot of flies.
The first part of it was easy because somebody had said, let's call, there's places that you can call up if you want, I guess testing places where they grow these things. But half of them arrived dead, half of these flies. And whatever was alive, they're trying to preserve it. And we needed more. So we got a bunch of college students. And I could only think of Chinatown, the back of restaurants, no matter what time of the year it is, they got flies. So we're out there trying to capture flies. You had to see the people looking at all of us thinking, you guys are nuts. But whatever fly was alive, that was still alive in that time frame that we were shooting, we were preserving it, and we were running around. She wanted the flies. Yoko wanted the flies. Said we got Dan Richter, who worked with her on other things. Said, he worked on films with Stanley Kubrick. They said we use a method where you shoot these insects with CO2 and it drops, onto the ground, and they walk. And, and she said, oh, good. So I could tell the fly what to do. She goes, no. They'll just drop. You can't tell them to do anything. They'll do whatever they're going to do.
We're talking to May Pang, who spent what is described as a lost weekend, 18 months with John Lennon. Her photographs, only some of which I've seen, are just spectacular. And they'll be on display with May herself Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Saturday and Sunday, May will be there at the Bridge Gallery. You can check it out at maypang.com. So May, we played the sound at the beginning. We described the incredible, not request, almost demand that Yoko Ono directed at you. It seems from the film that he was not that into you, even though I think he liked you as a staff person and someone who was working with him. And you were not, while you admired him greatly, you weren't really ready for this experience. And then all of a sudden...
I wasn't into him either.
Okay, so was it that one kiss that you describe in the film that all of a sudden was this magical moment when it was clear to both of you that this was the real deal?
That, it was that kiss, but I still wasn't sure. It was his... he kept pursuing me. Mm-hmm. And it was... I said, no, I don't want this. And he said, he didn't say, he just kept pursuing me. And we were working on the Mind Games album at the time. So we were in close quarters, and I'm thinking, how do I get out of this? And unbeknownst to me, whatever Yoko would ask me, she went back and told John, listen, I fixed it up for you. And he's like, what are you talking about? She had no idea. The two of us were not aware of her mind and what she was up to. So it was all off the cuff type of thing. And it just took a life of its own, really. Neither one of us, it was not direct. Yoko had no, she started the ball, but it was really John and myself that in the end got together.
You know what the most impressive part of the work to me is you showed us a human side of John Lennon. I don't just mean in his relationship with you. John Lennon, where he could sort of be a normal person at Disneyland, or when you guys went to Las Vegas, or when you were hanging out at a club. And we're going to put up, for those who are watching the streaming, just a few of the photographs, very few. A picture of John. We're going to talk about your relationship and his with Julian Lennon, his son with his first wife, Cynthia. A picture of you and John together, John with his tongue out. But describe more fully, if you can, the breadth of photographs, including, from what I understand, the only photograph taken of John Lennon when he finally signed the legal document that ended the Beatles as we know them.
It's true. All these photographs were really for me and him. So, it's how we take photos. Just a memory, it's a keepsake. And I never thought in a million years that it would be hanging in galleries or even sharing them to the world. So it turns out that, Scott Siegelbaum, who's my business partner in this venture, pursued me for 6 years because he said, I think people would be interested to see that time period because there's so much myth about that storyline, about that time. And what you're seeing is John at home. Not for a magazine, not posing for anybody. It's really, if he's posing, it's for us, just having fun. And he wasn't what the press liked to make him out to be, that he was a rebel rouser. Really, there are other people. They don't make the press. He's the one with the name that would make the press. So that's where it
But
went
was part of this, you said a minute ago that part of the reason you did the photographs and made them public and did the documentary, and you've also written a few books, is for fans of Lennon to get to know him better. But the sense I get, not knowing you, by the way, I am one of the few people who knew a lot about you because one of my mother's closest friends growing up in Philadelphia was this legendary newsman, Larry Kane. And Larry spent a lot of time with the Beatles. I texted him this morning, spoke glowingly about you, and he's one of the few of the people who didn't have you on the back burner, but talked about May Pang and her importance. And there's a great moment in the film where John Lennon visits Larry Kane, and Larry Kane, who's doing a newscast, has Lennon do the weather on the local television station, which is great. But I guess what I was trying to say, May, it seems to me part of this is for you, some level of vindication about how meaningful the relationship was to Lennon, no?
It's true. No, you're right. I got tired after so many years. Even though I say all these things back then, and people said, can't be true. Yeah. Can't be true. And when I did put out the one book of photographs, people kept saying, oh, you were with John. There's a lot of things. I mean, the stories that have come out, I've never had so many people say they were part of our circle and they weren't there. I mean, I've read more stories that I'm like, I don't think so. Who is this person? I've never seen him before. So this, John used to say to me, wait till they start writing stories about you and they're not true. And being so naive, I said, they're going to do that? Well, they did over the years. So now I have to reclaim my life, my narrative.
You do.
Because I can't let them go on to, with other people thinking that that's the way it was.
Well,
and it wasn't, because as I tell people, go ahead, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, we saw you with Elton John and Mick Jagger and
Nilsson.
and Harry Nilsson. We saw you with the James Cagney Honors Award. You're walking in with John Lennon there. You come as a couple, and we see the young Clint Eastwood, the young Ronald Reagan. I mean, it was an incredible. You were having such a great time. But the thing that touched me about this was your relationship with his son Julian. And the part where Julian is calling his dad, they were estranged for a while. And Yoko did not allow the calls to go through until there were several calls. So tell us about, and you were a young person too, that you wanted to get Julian and his dad back together.
Yeah, I always thought that type of thing is important. When you have parents when they're divorced. Yeah. I mean, I come from a very bad household too, so I understood that. And the fact that he called and I couldn't put the call through, I was working for both of them, it hurt. It really hurt me as a person seeing this, and I know how much it must have hurt him. And he kept calling until finally she allowed it. But I would never tell or say anything because I had to deal with the now moment, not a past moment. So I never told John what went on from before, only from that moment on. And so I was glad that I could get them to be together. And I became, Cynthia and I became very close.
Yes.
And it was, and we understood where our relationship and how things happened. And so, she knew exactly how I felt, and I understood how she felt and what she went through. So there's not many of those type of people that could share that. You could share those experiences with.
And you and Julian became very close. I mean, the film ends with the two of you walking down the street, arm in arm, and he says wonderful things about how happy his father was at the time that he was with you.
And I'm glad that I could give him that. I'm glad that I could mend that fence at the time with the two.
Yeah.
I saw Julian only in December, so it was good to see him, especially after the pandemic when we saw no one for a while.
That's right.
I speak to him every once in a while. He's a grown man. He's got his career. I'm just happy for him, for no matter what he does, and I'm always there to help out. And his last album that he did, called Jude, he asked me if I had any photos of him, and I didn't know if there was any photos, and I did, and that's the cover of his last album, Jude.
We're talking to May Pang. Her photos of her life with John Lennon are at the Bridge Gallery in Cambridge over the weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. Saturday and Sunday, May will be there as well. I want to play just this little great moment in the film. One of my favorite solo songs from Lennon was Whatever Gets You Through the Night. This is his only number one hit as a solo. Here's for just give you 15 seconds of this great song. So, May Pang, I didn't know the story till I saw the film about where the inspiration for Whatever Gets You Through the Night came from. What was it?
It was one night, and John was a big TV addict. He loved it, and it was also at the time when cable TV first started coming on. And there is John on the television pressing buttons to every show, and he comes upon the show that with this Reverend Ike.
Reverend Ike.
Yeah. And he's very flashy and he's very whatever. And somehow, just at that moment, he says, "It's whatever gets you through the night." And John's sitting in bed going, like that line. So he takes his pad and pencil, which he always had by the bed, and he writes down the line. He goes, "I like that line." And he leaves it. And that line became the inspiration for the rest of the song.
It's great. One last thing before we let you go, because I'm sure people, one name we haven't mentioned in this interview is Paul McCartney. So let me play a little sound also from the film. This is May speaking. Here it is.
We're listening to playback. I was facing the door, which suddenly opened, mouthed to John, "It's Paul and Linda." John turned as if he had spoken to him that morning and said, "Hey, Paul." Paul asked, "Is the session over?" "Yeah, but we're about to jam. Want to join?" And in that moment, 5 years of animosity and anger simply disappeared.
And one of your photographs is believed to be the last photograph of the two of them together, May Pang. Is that true?
Yes, it's the last one of the last photos of them together on that day. It's not the last time we saw him because we saw them. He was the last time we saw Paul and Linda was at our apartment in New York in January of '75. And so that was our last time they came by to visit to tell us they were going to New Orleans to record the new album, which subsequently was called Venus and Mars. And John says, "Oh, in New Orleans, oh my God." And he thought, "Oh, what a great place." And of course, later on, a day or two later, John asked if I thought it was a good idea if he should write with Paul again. And I said, "What, are you kidding?" I was like the exorcist. The head turned around. I said, "Of course." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Because as soloists, you guys are good writers. But when the two of you got together, it was something special that no one can be." And I knew that if we had stayed together, because he had already asked, he goes, "Let's book our flights. Let's go down to New Orleans."
Well, the end, because you clearly it looked like you were pretty in love as this story progressed. But at the end, as I understand it, Yoko Ono said to him, "Come back, come home." And
no, it wasn't as simple as that.
Yeah.
It's just a simple version. But he went over because she was calling incessantly to get him to come over. She goes, "I got a great method to help you quit smoking. And I got this hypnotist and this whole thing." And I knew something was up with her.
Yeah.
And then he thought he was coming back a couple of hours later. And, he didn't come back. And it wasn't the same guy that I saw that left. Because when he left, he said, "Let's book those tickets. Let's go." We were about to buy a house.
Wow.
So we had already brought the lawyer, we brought Julian, we were out to Long Island. We were about to do this in Montauk. And he goes, "And when I come home, we'll go out to dinner wherever you want to go." So this was not something that was planned.
Yeah. Well, it's a fantastic film, and I did learn so much, and I'm so glad you had that great relationship with Linda, with Cynthia when she was still alive, and still with Julian. It's great. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you're going to be there
Thank you
again.
for having me.
Oh, we're thrilled to have you, and we're thrilled. When I first started watching the documentary, I mentioned to Marjorie, I was walking on the Upper West Side where I used to live, and I, for a split second, saw John and Yoko and got to shake their hands, and that stayed with me my whole life. That was a split second. And then I read about you and your 18 months, and that I can't imagine. You tell the story beautifully in picture and word, and we're looking forward to the exhibit. Can't wait to meet you there, May. Thanks so much.
I hope to see you there.
You will.
Thank you
Great
very,
to see you,
very
May.
much for being with us, and congratulations. We have been on your great work. We've been speaking with May Pang, former partner to John Lennon. A gallery of her photographs from that era will be popping up at the Bridge Gallery in Cambridge tomorrow through Sunday, and May herself will be there in person on Saturday and Sunday to greet guests who come in. For info on the gallery, you can go to Bridge Photos. For more on May and her maypang.com. That's May, P-A-N-G, maypang.com. It's available to stream now on services like Amazon and Apple TV. Okay, coming up after this quick break, we're opening the phone and text lines for Am I the A-Hole? You're out to eat with some friends. Your food arrives before everyone else's. How many bites can you sneak in before you're officially a jerk? I'm Marjorie Egan. He's Jim Browder. You're listening to BPR on 89.7 GBH and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Rare earths are now so coveted, some people are stockpiling them in vaults. It's a response to Beijing's near monopoly on refining the elements.
They're installing what you might call a tap system where they can turn that tap on and off.
I'm Elsa Chang. How China developed such a stranglehold on rare earths on the next All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Morningside Music Bridge, returning to Boston. The summer program shines a spotlight on young classical musicians from around the world, with concerts now through August 1st at New England Conservatory, mmb.international. And Mass General Brigham. Their leading heart and vascular specialists are committed to providing breakthrough care to patients with cutting-edge research and innovative treatments. Learn more at massgeneralbrigham.org/heart.
Welcome back to BPR. Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Sue O'Connell and Andrea Cabral sitting in for us tomorrow at the library. They've got a great lineup. Hope you go. We're ending our Thursday with another round of Marjorie's favorite weekly segment, Am I the A-Hole? This week, we want your thoughts on an issue everybody is confronted at one time or another when going out to eat. If your meal comes early, are you allowed to start eating before everybody at the table has received their food? The number is 877-301-8970 to call or text. Some people feel really strongly you shouldn't take so much as a bite before everyone has theirs. Others figure it's better to enjoy your meal while it's hot, or maybe a little nibble or that sort of thing. We want to know where you fall and how you justify your stance. Is the a-hole the person who gets the meal first and eats it, or is the a-hole the other people who demand that you wait until everybody is served? The number is 877-301-8970. It has happened to all of us. So, Marjorie, see if you can take an equivocal position, as always. Who is the a-hole in this circumstance? What's the right thing to do?
Well, as you know, many of our mothers told us, when you're sitting at a table with 4 people and your food comes first, you wait till the other 3 people get their food before you eat yours.
So do you wait when your food comes?
Yes, I do. And sometimes people will say, go ahead. But I always feel funny doing it, so I don't. And how about you, Jim?
No, I'm sure, but I want to finish this. You probably wait, but knowing you as I do, you probably tell other people to go ahead. Is that correct?
I do, yes, I do.
Okay, I am the opposite. I tell other people not to eat if I haven't gotten mine, but if I do get mine, I go right ahead. That sort of summarizes the difference between two of us. So I guess there are a number of who's the a-hole questions. Is the a-hole the person who demands that others wait? Or is it how do you describe this? There are 2 potential questions here. I guess the first a-hole is somebody who either doesn't wait right or demands that other people do wait until they get their food. Is that correct?
There's 2 angles, 2 opportunities.
Right, and it could be the other people
here.
or the other people, the a-holes, if they say, don't eat yours until we get ours. I'm not explaining this well, but I think people know what we're talking about. 877-301-8970 is the number. Can we have Larry David try to explain this?
Right here.
He obviously has thoughts on all this. Of course he does whenever we do this, about when someone else's food arrives before yours at a restaurant.
Yeah, Larry's out to lunch with someone who wanted charity lunch with Larry, and of course the waiter brings Larry's lunch first.
Here it is.
When do I start?
Oh, he said it'll just be a couple minutes.
So you don't want me to start, is that?
It's a couple minutes. You don't mind, do you?
I just think it's kind of weird. I mean, if you got your food come first, I would say go ahead and start. What do I care?
Well, I would wait for you to get yours.
I really wouldn't want you to wait. I'd be uncomfortable if you waited.
Well, I'd feel it would be polite to wait for your food to arrive.
I think it's kind of impolite to prevent a person who's hungry from eating.
Yeah, but we're supposed to be having lunch together. I mean,
we are having lunch. What's the difference? Do we have to start at the exact same time? I don't get that.
He's genius. He is a 877-301-8970 is the number.
Yeah. Okay. We'll see what people think about this. If you talk about power imbalances all the time, oh no, that's the wrong thing. Never mind. I'm reading the wrong thing.
Okay,
Josh and Holliston.
We're really running this beautifully. This segment. Go ahead, Josh. Hi.
Hi.
Yeah.
Jim, you gotta go a little slow with that number.
What number?
I had to Google it.
Oh, sorry.
Well, you should have memorized it by now, Josh.
877-301-8970.
Or Josh, or the number is 877-301-8970. Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, or you can just Google it.
Exactly. What do you got here? Go ahead.
All right. So what you do is if you get your food early, You offer everybody a bite,
You're a
which
genius.
nobody's going to take.
You're a genius.
And then you say, well, I'm just going to have a little nibble.
Brilliant.
Dig in.
Josh, that is brilliant. I'm serious. That is such a brilliant
Josh, you've
tactic.
really thought this through. Have you had to put this into practice on many occasions?
I've never done it. It just popped in my head to do it.
It's incredible.
And I decided to call you. I've been listening to you guys for years.
Well, thank you.
I've never called.
Josh, you're not allowed to look. What's the phone number? Exactly.
877
Yeah.
301
Yeah.
8970.
You're the man.
good.
Josh, that was
Very
excellent.
good.
You got it great.
Whoa.
Hey, Josh, call us again. We appreciate it. Zoe, our co-worker, has exposed me a little bit. She says, that's not exactly your position, Jim. You just reach across the table
That's true.
and take the person's food who has already
That's right.
received it ahead of yours.
That's right.
There may be some truth to that.
Yeah.
877-301-8970.
In the case of a birthday cake, Jim doesn't have to wait because he's the only person there to eat the birthday cake.
Oh, that's so funny. God, that is really making me
Oh,
laugh.
here's a unique one.
What is it?
This person says the a-hole is the waiter. Only a 25% tip for them. Oh, that's a
By the way, in
pretty
all
good tip,
seriousness,
actually.
it isn't their fault because it's when the food comes out, they want to bring it hot. But do you not think that they should go out of their way at a restaurant to try to bring everybody their meal at the
You're
same
supposed
time?
to. When I was waiting tables, you always brought everybody at the same time. You had a big fat tray. If you couldn't carry it by yourself, you get the busboy to help you. So yes, everybody get their food at the same time.
I want to be, before we get back to the calls, I want to say, I know it's hypocritical of me what I said before, but it really is true. If I do get served first, I really feel the need to eat it. But I do deeply resent when I'm not served first and other people eat theirs. So I have to be honest. I don't want to fool people.
Well, it's a visual thing for you.
It's a
you can
visual
see the
thing.
food, and it's
Yeah.
very upsetting because you want it in your mouth.
Well, what happens often when other people get served before me and I haven't gotten served, I start sweating profusely because it causes me great anxiety. And
Oh, here's another texter.
What is
I know
it?
who the a-hole is. Harriet Heinemann.
Oh, that's funny. Let's go to William.
Jim's ex-girlfriend.
It was not. Well, let's go to William in West Boylston. Hi, William. Welcome to the show.
Hi, William.
Hey, good afternoon, folks.
And
I've
to
been
you.
listening to you since your AM days. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
It's great.
So, yes, I think there's a third party involved here, and that is the restaurant itself, where they're supposed to provide everybody's meals at the same time.
That's right.
They've kind of screwed up a bit, and when I'm in this situation, or a friend of mine is, we ask each other, hey, do you mind if I get started? If their steak is 10 minutes away, then your food is ruined. So I don't know who's the wrong one. I think people need to communicate a little more rather than peeking around and sneaking a bite.
But let me tell you what the problem is,
communicate.
William. Your approach is the grown-up approach. But the problem with the grown-up approach is if you get served and turn to me and say, do you mind if I start? I do mind if you start, but I would never say to you, I mind that if you start. You know what I mean? You really put me in a difficult position when you kindly ask the question. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
I do, but I'm already in that position. So it's like you got to flip the side, right?
I guess so. William, thank you. We really appreciate your call. Thanks so much.
Here's a texture that says, what an odd thing to be offended by. I'd rather they go ahead and eat rather than be hangry. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Well, there's another problem with this, by the way. The other problem with going ahead and eating, which I would like to be able to do, there is nothing worse when you're at a good restaurant with a good meal, when you are done and people are just starting their meals. Isn't that like a horrible feeling? Then you feel like they do have to offer you some of theirs. Don't you feel that way?
Or if people are really slow eaters and you're all done, you have to wait for them for another 15 minutes before you can get dessert.
My older daughter is a very slow eater. But let me tell you, she savors every bite.
She savors it?
More than anybody I've ever known.
Do you take it right off her plate if she's not done in time?
I generally tap her on the shoulder. She turns around, and then I slide whatever she's eating onto my plate. She's fallen for it for 33 years. It's incredible.
Here's a good one. I'll wait for you. Hope you don't mind that I eat while I wait.
But I'm bummed. Trish, that's a good line. Trish in Wakefield, you're next on Am I the A-Hole? Hi.
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 Well, I'm a boomer, so I think that there's basic etiquette to follow here.
Oh, please.
And first of all, you should never, before I even say that, I've never been into a restaurant where they didn't serve everyone pretty much at the same time.
Oh, I've
Secondly, okay, but it's rare, I think. But secondly, it's never polite to well, I shouldn't say never. It's not polite to eat before other people get their meals. And lastly, it's never polite to point out someone's bad manners. So if someone starts eating, and then you don't say anything. You let them eat, and you wait till everyone else gets their meal. That's just basic etiquette.
Well, since you have some etiquette expertise, let me ask you this. It is true what Zoe said before. If there's a French fry on anybody's plate at a table, I sort of feel like I have a right to at least one or two, even though it's not my dish. That's not proper etiquette to just reach over and grab one? Is that correct?
Well, is that the question here today?
No.
I mean, basically, are you saying this person got? Hey, yeah, you can say, "Can I have one of your French fries?" Yeah.
Well, that takes time. I don't. I prefer to just go.
Here's an etiquette question, Trish.
Depends on the relationship.
This person.
That's a good point.
This person
good, Trish.
is saying it's common etiquette that if you are served first and your meal is hot, you should begin eating. If it's cold, you should wait. How about that?
Nah.
No. Okay. Okay.
Trish, well thought out. Thank you kindly for the call. We really appreciate it. Call us again.
Okay, here's another one who says, in etiquette training, this person went to etiquette training apparently, the rule was as long as half the table had their food, it was okay to eat.
Where was that? Where does that come from? Really?
I don't know.
Are you really okay? I mean, part of the thing about you, everybody thinks you're really nice. And
I'm nicer than you.
Well, you are. I didn't say you weren't. I just said everybody thinks you're really nice.
Low bar.
Okay, so the question is, are you really not upset if people get fed before you and they start eating while you have nothing?
If they don't say something, I think you got to say something.
Do you mind?
Yeah, do you care if I start? No, go ahead, start.
And you don't care?
No,
I care. You don't care at all. You're sitting there, you got nothing going on. They didn't bring you rolls. There's no butter. There's no nothing. There are no breadsticks.
You do look at food and start sweating profusely. I mean, you have a visual thing with food.
These have been excellent calls. Josh had it right to begin with. The key to this is to offer everybody a bite if you get served first. And no one except me is ever going to say, yes, I'd like a bite. And that really covers your ethical or etiquette responsibility.
A lot of people find that very annoying. They want their dish and they want to eat it themselves and they don't want anybody else to have some. They sit with their arms around their plate so nobody can come and get it.
Well, except there's another way to do that. If I followed Josh's advice, would anybody like a bite? And if someone said yes, I would say, I don't think so. So I was just asking as a hypothetical. Christine, this is an area that is cutting really close to the whatever with me, the nerve.
Yeah,
you know?
no. Well, I always tell the story about we used to, our old radio station, we had 5 radio stations, and places like Wilson Farms would bring all this food there.
Free food.
Thanksgiving. And it'd be down the end of the hall, maybe about 50 feet from where our studio was. And Jim would have just finished this huge submarine sandwich, like a meatball sub or something like that. And then they would announce that the food was there. He just finished eating this huge sub. And the commercial would come.
It's like roller derby right down the hall. No, but by the way, we were the lowest paid people at that station. We loved the job.
You had to eat as much as you could.
We had co-hosts who were making $1 million a year who would go to commercial immediately down the hall for a free slice of ham.
Yeah. People are loading up their plates, desserts, bread, and everything, going back to the studio. Okay, Christina,
wait. Christina, before we go to you, just patient 1 second. Anonymous texter. If your meal is delayed, just have a hot dog or liverwurst in your pocket and nibble on that during the delay. Excellent point. Here's an anonymous texter, brilliant, and relates to us. I think it depends on the restaurant. The Capitol Grill, wait. If I'm at the Keno table at Magoni's, I don't have to wait to open the can of SpaghettiOs.
Okay. Another vicious swipe at Magoni's.
That was the old Magoni's. The new Magoni's, which is opening,
we're waiting for it to open. They got a roof deck. I can't wait to get down there and sit in the roof and look
have
over
electric can openers on every table.
Taunton River.
It's amazing. Christina, you were very patient. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, Christina, thank you. I love your show.
Thank you.
I grew up in a traditional family.
Hey, Christina, we're going to put you on hold 1 second. The connection's horrible. Move around. We'll take one call, and then I promise we'll come right back to you. So don't go away. Just go to another room or another car seat or something.
I'm not sure Jim waits till he pulls away from the drive-up window before he starts digging in.
That's true. Usually I do open the bag immediately, stick my head in it. Marilyn, it's like a feed bag on a horse. Marilyn, doing this to make Marjorie laugh.
Marilyn in Hyde Park.
Hi, Marilyn.
Thank you
the
for
first
calling.
caller hung up. I didn't
She
mean for
hung
you
up.
to hang
I'm
up.
sorry.
I'm sorry. Hi, Marilyn. Hi.
Hi. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
That's a great question.
Thanks.
Now that it's brought up on your show here, I don't know if I've ever waited or not. When the food comes, I just dig in. I've never thought to say to myself, well, should I wait for other people to get their food or not? But I think that a solution to that is making sure when the waitress or waiter comes to the table, order appetizers at the same time you're ordering your main dish.
Genius.
So that everyone's eating the appetizers, and by the time before they can finish eating the appetizers, the main dishes come to the table, and everyone's been eating. They get eating the appetizers, they're enjoying the main dish. Everyone's happy. Everyone has food in their mouth.
Marilyn, you are a genius. That was a brilliant compromise, sort of like a Solomonic approach to the crisis. Thank you for that.
Here's one, Harmony in Providence, it says it depends on who's at the table. If I'm out with my parents or grandparents, eating before everybody get their food would be out of the question. But if I was out with friends or my siblings, it would just be a free-for-all. What are you laughing
Read
at?
Susan Framingham's
Jim
text.
asks, does anyone want a bite? If they say yes, Jim responds, now you know what it's like to want. Like in the Hunger Games. Sort of the same thing.
Oh, my God.
A little
so
torture.
this is Am I the A-hole? And basically, the question is, you get served first. Do you have to wait till other people are served? Should you expect that if someone gets served first, they wait? Which side are you on and that kind of thing?
Okay.
Oh, Christina's back.
Christina's back.
Hi, Christina.
Hi, I'm back. Can you hear me better?
Yes, much better.
Thank you.
Okay. So I grew up in a traditional family, and we had very specific eating protocol where we had to all be seating, and we all had to wait and eat, especially our parents. So this translates to eating out, which I do a lot. So when I go out to eat, it's the same way. It's just part of my inbred, and I wait, and I expect others to wait too. One of the things that I've learned to do is if I have the food before me, I don't ask somebody if it's okay to eat, but I wait, and if they say to me it's okay to eat, I still say, no, that's okay, because what's going to be a few minutes? And one of the worst, and my kids have grown up, now they're young adults, they also do the same thing. We all sit and wait, and it's just such a really great etiquette thing that you can do and to honor everybody around you. But one of the things I hate is people talking with their mouth full.
Oh. I am totally with you. That was a very well thought out call, Christine.
Yeah.
I'm glad you came back and got in a better kind of zone there.
They just talk about that on dating sites.
What, about eating with your mouth full?
Yeah, the things that drive people. We've done stories on it. The things that
talking
people,
with your mouth full. I'm sorry.
Or
we occasionally do that
chewing,
on the air, and it drives people out of their minds.
That's right.
So Marjorie wants to apologize for doing it. And here's an anonymous texter, Jim and Margaret. Well, actually, Margaret doesn't work here anymore, but she was great when she did. Jim and Margaret, this is an American issue where individualism is the rule. Most other cultures share their food. I am Chinese. By the way, this is one of the great joys of eating at a Chinese restaurant. We eat as the dishes come, family style, passing it around, we share. I love that about Asian food, Asian restaurants, Asian culture. It's a sharing kind of thing. Do you understand that?
Yeah, but I was surprised you like that because you could be, if there's a big dish of something you really like, you may be the last person to get that dish.
Let me tell you something. No one knows better how to put their thumb on one of those lazy Susans. They think they're rolling that baby around to get that plate. Ain't happening. You know what I mean? Something is really good. Okay. In any case.
Ellen from Westport, thank you.
Hello, Ellen. How are you?
Hi, how are you too?
Fine, thanks.
I don't have an issue with that. I think it's a matter of communication.
Good point.
But I am a big time talker, and usually I'm yapping. So if the food comes early and everyone's eating, I don't care because I'm usually the last one that has to finish.
Because you're talking so much.
So no one says anything, but I'm still there eating when when the waitress comes to get the dishes and stuff. I'm still eating. So
have you had an experience, Ellen? Have you had an experience where people just leave and go home and go to bed while you're still finishing, or has that not happened?
That's not happened. I usually can tell when I read body language, and I can tell when they're getting really antsy, so I just ask for a doggy bag.
Oh, that's a
Ellen,
good
you
one.
know how to live, my friend. Ellen, that was great. We love you. Call us again. Really appreciate it. Thanks so much.
877-301-8970 is the number. This is who is the a-hole here? The person who sits there and insists that everybody else waits until they get their dinner, if their dinner is served first. Or who's the other possible a-hole?
I'm not telling.
Okay, don't tell.
So this is actually quite a nice compliment, and I usually don't read compliments, but it's nice. This anonymous texter says, I want to give Jim credit for being as creative as possible and finding the ways to be as obnoxious as possible. Well, thank you. It means a lot to me. Thank you very much.
Matthew in the car, thank you for calling.
Hello, Matthew in the car.
Hey, good afternoon. I love hearing you guys laugh. That's
Thank you. We love laughing. So
well, this is a good segment to laugh in. That's why I love it.
I think the a-hole is a person who won't wait.
Yes.
Although I like the idea of the appetizers, but
that's a good idea.
I feel like we live in a time where narcissism is becoming the norm and manners are going out the window. So I think we need to hold on to whatever manners and etiquette we can.
Can I tell you, that is the right answer. That if there is a right answer, which there often is not in these, that is the right answer. That's the way to deal with your fellow human beings respectfully.
That's right.
I can't do that, but I totally understand. Matthew, thank you for your thoughtful call. We appreciate it.
Everyone in the party should wait until all food has been served, unless you're getting fried clams, in which case you must eat them piping hot.
Because
says Rick from Newbury.
They can get soggy. Who was that again?
Rick from Newbury.
Rick is totally right, because they can get soggy and really horrible kind of thing there.
Mary in the car, thank you for calling.
Hi, Mary in the car.
Hi.
Hi.
So the etiquette is to wait, but the a-hole is the person who doesn't have their food yet and doesn't say, oh, go ahead, just eat. No problem.
Yeah.
That is another what if you don't believe that? Should you say it anyway?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I figured. No, that's the kind of person you sound like. What's up, Mary?
I just said, yeah, I mean, are you really that hungry that you can't,
Well, actually, usually I am. I am. But you were right, and that's the right way to live. But the answer to your question is yes, I usually am. Mary, thank you very much for the call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970 is the
If
number.
you absentmindedly take a bite from someone else's plate and someone calls you out, do you have to spit it out?
No, obviously you don't. Do you remember, Marjorie and I did a thing when we were on NECN together at a show that absolutely nobody ever watched. Do you remember we went to Johnny's
you ate
in
off
Newton
people.
Center?
You went with a fork.
We went over
No,
to
you did with your
my
fingers.
We went over to people's
you put
tables.
your fingers
No, we
in
first
people's omelets.
No, that is not how it started. We started when we walked over and either you said or I said.
You said.
Do you know who I am?
That was you, Jim.
Nobody knew who I am. No, you said, do you know who he is? Yeah, I don't mean you. And if their answer was no, I don't, which was the answer of everybody, I took their French fries. That was sort of the penalty for having no
idea. You took somebody's
idea.
Scrambled eggs.
I did. Actually, I did. That is true.
And their bacon and a sausage.
I took a slice of bacon. I didn't take all their bacon. That was at Johnny's, which has maybe the best corned beef hash of any place.
Well, you did that too, the corned beef hash. And you know what? You just can't discreetly take one piece of corned beef hash. You kind of have to stick your whole fingers in there and just kind of squish it between
Just push it aside and push their part back. We're going to take one more call. Is Edgar joining us? Oh, he is. Okay. While we're waiting for Edgar from the Culture Show to join us, Mary in Middleton, you are next on
Hi, Mary.
BPR. Hi.
Hi, guys.
Hi.
I love this discussion.
Thank you.
I'm always hungry.
Well, yeah. One of us is
but,
anyway.
I think the easiest thing is to just, if you get your food first, ask your waiter how much longer it's going to be before the other dishes come out. And then you serve the purpose of finding that out or embarrassing your waiter, which really should happen because they should have waited for all the meals.
Another incredibly strategic phone call, Mary. Mary, thank you very much for the call.
Apparently, we performed a public service here this afternoon,
Thank
Jim.
you.
Because a texter just said, I didn't even know that waiting to eat was a thing.
Exactly. I wrote that text. I sent it in. So, Edgar, you're a relatively thoughtful person.
I try to be.
Edgar Herrick III, by the way, he's hosting the whatever show, Culture Show today. Where are you on this waiting versus non-waiting when the meal is served?
I got to say, before I weigh in here, I just want to say this, and I'm normally a little starstruck by you guys because you're Jim and Marjorie.
That's right.
But now I am talking to people who were just talking to the woman who spent the lost weekend with John Lennon.
God.
I am still a little gobsmacked by the fact that you were talking with May Pang.
Well,
you seen the movie yet, by the way?
Yes.
The movie's great.
Isn't the movie fantastic? I loved it. It was
She's
so much
such
fun.
an interesting character.
And such a lovely person. That
Great interview.
Yeah.
No, you also, what was great about that, since you brought it up, she had a heavy New York accent. She's from Spanish Harlem. She lives in Queens. And you just love the fact that she's such a New York kid grown up to be whatever.
Yeah, a lot of great, I mean, they were all hanging with all the stars, all the singers, and Paul McCartney.
She was hanging with John Lennon. Forget all the other.
Yeah, it's just like, that is the star.
That is the star.
By the way, you know why Edgar brought that up? Not the compliment.
Because he doesn't want to talk about what he does.
He doesn't want to tell us what
I've
he
heard
does.
that he runs around stealing food.
Oh, you remember. No, I mean, listen, I think I heard a couple people, I was always under the impression that this is sort of settled law.
Settled law.
If it is hot, you are supposed to eat it right away. And if it is not hot, you wait. Although we were talking in the Culture Show control room, Max Chow Gillette, whose family has a restaurant, so he would know.
What restaurant? Here?
No, I think they're involved in a restaurant in Texas.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
He noted that basically it's like if you have a side like fries or something like that, it's okay to munch on your side, but you shouldn't dig into your food.
By the way, I live by a very similar rule. No, can I say my rule quickly?
Certainly.
If the meal is hot, you eat it, and if it's cold, you eat it. That is, in 30 seconds, what's on the Culture Show?
Well, you're talking about restaurants. We're going to talk about Chris Burdick, who's a writer. He wrote this book called Clamor, which is all about all of this noise around us, including in restaurants, and what it is doing. It's melting our brains. Not really, but it's fascinating.
Yeah,
thing
you
to
had
really
to shout
start to think
across
about.
the table.
So soundscaping and what sound means in our life, and then we're also going to talk about Cyndi Lauper, and we're going to have a flautist. So it's going to be a good show.
Cyndi Lauper being 72, and should she still be doing her deal? Or
no, we're going to look back at her great She's So Unusual album, but also she's playing in Mansfield tonight. I think there's still tickets available.
That's why
she was in the paper. I saw her picture in the Globe.
Love Cyndi Lauper, right?
Yes.
She's great. She can sing forever.
Good to see you all.
Stick around for the Culture Show.
Okay, thanks a lot for listening to another edition of BPR. Thanks for all your great texts and phone calls, particularly on Am I the A-Hole edition. Keep up with us 24/7 way of our podcast. Check out our TikTok page. Tomorrow, Sue O'Connell and Andrea Cabral are in for it. We have the day off at the Boston Public Library. They'll talk with GBH's Kelly Crossley, Yahoo Miller for our media analysis segment Press Play. Live Music Friday with the Boston Landmarks Orchestra. NPR TV critic Eric Deggans with what we should be watching on TV, and a conversation on the state of refugees under Trump with Jeff Thielman with the International Institute of New England, and an Afghani refugee as well. Our crew: Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Noel Garcia, Hannah Loss, Patrick Lally, our engineer John Paul Parker, Jamie Bologna. The Culture Show's right after us. I'm Marjorie Egan.
Jim Browdy.
Thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a great afternoon.
Bye.
What's trending? What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show, next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And South Coast Artists, presenting its 22nd annual Open Studio Tour July 19th and 20th in Tiverton and Little Compton, Rhode Island, and Dartmouth and Westport, Massachusetts. You can download the tour brochure at southcoastartists.org. The Great American Recipe is back. A new group of talented home cooks showcase signature dishes in this uplifting competition. Catch an all-new episode of The Great American Recipe tomorrow night at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening